That's all right. Okay, so the recording cut out, and I think everybody heard that, but for the record, the recording cut out when we admitted somebody, and we've now reset the recording, so Zoom is recording the meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Staff weed ate and pulled weeds. We killed at the playground equipment in Silo Hill, Emmett Gardens, and Memorial Park. They installed a new board fence along the south gate side of ball field number 3 parking lot. They weed ate and weed killed a mile a minute weed by a mile marker 0.3. Put new boards and sand in the horseshoe pits, ran new conduit for the concession stand and community park. They assisted the contractor. Contractor removed and trimmed some trees in Memorial Park. Staff put mulch around Emmett Gardens playground equipment. And they repaired the hose bib at ball field number 3 concession stand in Memorial Park. Related to water, Rainbow Lake is still at the spillway level of 16.6 feet. Roughing filters are being backwashed 3 times a day. Water production and consumption, we produce an average of 242,944 gallons per day in the month of May, and consumed an average of 257,354. That's the equivalent of about 15.5% for the backwash water. Listed the percentages of where water was obtained. In the month of May, we purchased 476,950 gallons of water from Mount St. Mary's. Related to wastewater, we treated an average of 323,146 gallons per day. Consumed 257,354, which meant that 20.36% of the wastewater treated was wild water. We had no spills of untreated sewage. We did exceed the plant's design capacity 3 times in the month of May 1st, May 2nd, May 13th. We only received 0.7 inches of precipitation in May. We currently are in a deficit of 1.37 inches over the last 6 months. Trash pickup will remain Mondays in the month of July. I listed some of the meetings I attended in May. Just some noteworthy items. Staff worked the yard waste dumpster twice in May. The LG Sonic is in the lake and communicating well with the Netherlands. We did have a scheduled visit with MDE and a municipality out in Garrett County on our LG Sonic and our algae blooms. We received approval from the state for our consumer confidence report, which everybody should have received a link in their water bill. It's also posted on our website. Staff continues to work on the lead and copper service line inventory as required by MDE. Staff unclogged some sewer lines from manhole number 18 to number 22 on West Lincoln Avenue. They assisted the contractor installing new service line at 101 to 103 West Main Street, and staff hung 34 water shutoff flyers and only had 3 water shutoffs for non-payment. That's my report for May.
Yeah, thank you. Are there any questions for the manager related to the report? Nope, hearing none. Okay, thank you. Great. We'll move on. Okay, we now turn to the town planner's report. Hello.
I actually have some notes from our grant administrator that she wanted me to go over for her grants report.
Okay.
On
sure.
page 14.
Okay.
She just wanted me to highlight a few areas for the community park restroom and concession stand project. We put a request for bid for an owner's project manager. It was advertised the end of the June with the due date July 21st. The board, we have to see what the bids are. The board may or may not have to approve that bid. Creamery Road Pump Station construction is anticipated to start at the end of August, pending the USDA approval. We had a pre-construction meeting about 2 weeks ago. The outdoor storybook trail, the ribbon cutting was held on July 6th. The start of the trail is near the ADA playground. The story will be replaced at least quarterly. The downtown streetlight replacement project, the purchase of the streetlights was put out the bid at the end of June with the due date of July 21st. This will be coming to the board on August 21st for approval. The business district and neighborhood safety grant, the speed trailers are out. You may have noticed the one that is currently installed at Irishtown Road. The sign flashes red and blue lights and says slow down if a driver is over 25 miles per hour. Newly awarded grants, the town received notification it was awarded $286,388 in grant and an $859,164 loan from MDE for the North Seaton Avenue water line replacement project. and a $277,500 grant and an $832,500 loan for the DePaul Street Waterline Project. Ms. Shaw has also submitted a $552,500 grant application to the Department of Housing and Community Development that would reduce the MDE loan amount if it is approved. That's just highlighting some of hers.
Definitely
Areas.
highlights. That's great news.
Mhm.
Okay, any questions for staff related to the grant presentation and loan presentation? Hearing none. Okay, all
Yeah,
right.
I just have one, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. Mr. Davis, go ahead.
The project manager for the bathroom concession stand, what is that?
Basically, the project
I
manager
don't
will
quite
oversee,
understand.
the entire project, the installation of the building, the connection of the water sewer line, the connection of the electric, obtaining all the permits, and basically just managing the whole project.
Okay,
I have a question.
Mr. Sweeney,
Just
yes,
one.
sir.
It will be going where the other concession stand was sitting,
If you go out there, it's,
where the electric and the sewer. was
Yes.
before?
mhm.
Yeah, the caboose used to sit back there was the old concessions. We had a train back there.
Okay.
It's now a school.
Oh,
East
okay.
School on the eastern shore. But I didn't know if it's going back in the same spot or not.
Mhm.
I guess I'll ask the question, segue into that. Why are we pursuing a project manager for this endeavor?
Because we don't have the staff that has the expertise to manage the installation of the building, to manage the installation and connections of the water, sewer, electric. It's just basically to manage the project, make
So-
sure it's done to Frederick County Code, Town Code, obtain all the permits.
So it's synonymous with putting something out to bid, like a construction project.
Right.
I'm just not used to seeing project manager.
So we have project manager, like we have a project manager for the pump station.
Okay,
And that's provided by the engineer. The engineer of this project, Fox and Associates, doesn't have that person on staff to be able to be a project manager. So
I
that's
see.
why we put it out to bid.
okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff related to this item? Okay, so for clarity's sake, if we're privatizing this in order to manage the project, we feel that the expenditure saves staff time and is efficient with our funding, with our monies.
Yeah, so we do have grant funding for this project and the town also had a cash match for it. I don't recall what that was off the top of our head. But yes, I mean, if you pull a staff away from their regular duties to try to manage this project that they don't have the expertise to do, I think in the long run, it's going to end up costing the town more money than going this route.
Great, okay, thank you. Okay, any other questions related to the grants administrator report? Mr. Briggs? Oh, okay. Okay, very good. All right, so let's do this. Right now, we would go to the town planners report in a moment. At the mayor's request, we're gonna manage a presentation. Mr. Ward, good evening, welcome. Thank you for being here. Mr. Briggs, I'll turn it over to you. Walk up to front of the room.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ward.
Sure,
For
absolutely.
everything Vigilant Host does for us. And this, your token of our appreciation for everything Vigilant Host does for us. And
Well, we're grateful. Thank you so
thank you.
much.
Please
Thank
tell
you. Yep.
everybody, maybe we can get a picture of
Yep,
it.
sure.
Do you want to try?
Should I try corner?
Yeah, I'll get the photo. How about that? That's what you're asking? Yes, okay, here we go.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
all right.
Okay. Okay.
Let's get you on.
Yeah.
No. It's not so good. All right, okay, but thank you. Work and- Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Who won it?
Not the big jackpot, so $500,000 for next week, at least. Number 44 is gone. Thank you again.
Yeah, sure, thanks. Okay, Mr. Mayor, we're good? Mr. Mayor, we're okay? Okay, very good. Okay, so at this time, we now turn to the town planner's report. Thank you for your patience.
Good evening. This is the town planners report. The month of June, we did 6 zoning permits and 1 street closure and 3 cross connection permits. Also sent out over 25 cross connection renewal notifications to businesses with high hazard devices. The planning commission met on June 27th to discuss the planning commission annual report, which was approved by the planning commission. And also to discuss the site plan of the Eden Shrine Museum entrance, which was also approved. And the continuation of the workshop for the text amendment, economic development flex district or the floating zone also took place. And the planning commission also met on July 5th, it's not in the report, but to recommend approval of the floodplain ordinance. It's a mandatory measure to make sure that the town meets the standards for FEMA and continues to be part of the national flood insurance program. And the next planning commission meeting is on July 31st. Some development updates. Federal Stones Public Works Agreement is ready for the Board of Commissioners to approve, which will be on the agenda shortly. And also pending payment and performance bonds. Same thing for Village Liquors and Plaza Inn. And I've already mentioned that the Eden Shrine Museum entrance was approved. No public works needed for this because improvements are being done on their property, not town property. And also mentioned the EDFD and the floodplain ordinance. Staff met with the applicant to finalize the text for the floating zone. And we will also incorporate the planning commission's recommendations, and we'll have a final draft ready for the next planning commission meeting. And in terms of grants, the community legacy grant application for FY24 was submitted on June 29th, or most of it was submitted. The only pending item is the resolution, which is on the agenda tonight. And the IIJA Silo Hill Basin retrofit progress report will be submitted shortly after today. Yes.
Thank you. Any questions for the town planner related to today's report?
No questions, just a comment. I like the format of your report. It's straight to the point and easy to read. Thank you.
Yes, because
you.
I didn't know, I couldn't see what it was until, because it's changed and it's for the better. Even ask him, where's the report? Oh, it's fancy. Yeah.
Great.
Okay, great.
Okay, any other questions for the planner from other commissioners? Nope, hearing none. Okay, thank you. Greatly appreciated. Okay, so we move forward to commissioner comments. I'll give everybody a heads up because not everybody's in the room. Commissioner Davis, I will start with you. Commissioner Bowman-Pollitt, I will ask you to go next. After that, Commissioner Sweeney, and then Commissioner Ritz.
Okay, thanks. Just to let you know, I keep getting a sign up here on my screen that my connection is unstable. I guess it's connection, not me, but something's unstable here. But I just want to thank the Heritage Day Committee for their great job. I think this seems to be getting bigger and better every year, and it's a big thing for the town, and we really appreciate what they do. And the only other thing, I guess, for those of you that don't know, I have submitted my name and the proper paperwork to run for mayor in the upcoming election. And that's all I got.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Bowman-Pollitt.
Just piggybacking on what Commissioner Davis said, just wanted to thank the committee for a successful Heritage Day. I think the whole town was happy to see that the weather held out for it. And we had a lot of help from the Lions Club and the deputies and Heritage Day and so many people participating in the parade. It was a great time had by all. And a shout out to town staff for their ongoing efforts and time in setting up and navigating the farmers market on Fridays, despite, you know, rain or sun or whatever Mother Nature throws at us. And for people who haven't seen yet, town staff has a farmers market Facebook page where they can see which vendors are coming each week. I know that's also listed on our town website on the calendar, so it's posted in multiple places. So thank you to town staff for their due diligence and efforts and the success of the market. That's all I have.
Great, thank you. Okay, Commissioner Sweeney?
I also want to thank everybody for helping for Community Day. Without the town and the Knights of Columbus and the fire department and the police and all the other clubs work together, we have a lot of people who help put on the Heritage Day. And if we don't have their help, we couldn't do it. We could use some help for the Heritage Day. If anybody would like to help with planning it and helping with the events and everything, we have a meeting every third Monday of the month. We have one coming up the 17th of July. It's 6:30 it'll be at the Knights of Columbus building. If anybody's interested in helping, we could use everyone's help because it's getting bigger and harder to run. And this year was our best parade we've had for a couple of years. And that was because we planned on having somebody run it, and then she did a wonderful job. I also want to thank Commissioner Pollock for the farmer's market and revitalizing it. It is wonderful. It fills the whole area up. On both the last 2 Fridays, it looked like it was full, complete. I haven't been able to stop because I was on vacation and stuff. But when I went by it through town to pick up things and go back out of town, it looked like went pretty well. So I'm glad it got reorganized and redone and it's an active part of our town. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. Not to be redundant, but I also wanted to thank everybody who was involved with Community Heritage Day for a successful year this year. As always, thanks. Too many to name, so thank you to everyone. Mr. Mayor, I read in the Catoctin Banner that you are not filing for mayor this year. Just wanted to say thank you for serving 12 years. Looking back on it, at least for the past 75 years, you are the longest serving mayor of the town of Emmitsburg, maybe of all time. I don't even know. I can only go back that far, but thank you for all that you've done. Commissioner Davis and Commissioner O'Donnell, thank you both for stepping up to run for the office of mayor. It proves to be an interesting race. We still have time for other candidates too. Looking forward to it. As for the commissioner seat currently occupied by me, friendly reminder to everyone that you have until August 25th to file for that seat. I am not seeking a 4th term myself. Mr. Brim and Commissioner Amy Bowman Pollitt, like Commissioner Sweeney said, thank you for all that you've done for the revitalized farmers market and anyone else too. I might not be naming, but huge improvements this year. So thank you very much. And last but not least, to Mr. and Mrs. Detheridge for all of their hard work at the new community garden. Thank you.
Looks wonderful. Everything's growing. Great.
So I'll start. Community Day was fantastic. Heritage Day was also great. We'll have one event in the future, I think, but no, it was glorious. And a lot of work went into it from a lot of people. And as Mr. Sweeney said, there's a synergy there. It's not just one group, but the Lions Club certainly are out in front and they're leading from the front, which is appreciated. Mr. Ritz, I bid you a sad farewell, despite the fact that sometimes I will call you Dr. No. You're looking at stuff with a sharp eye is always appreciated, and it's necessary. And sometimes when disagreement occurs, the best comes forward. So you've served the town profoundly well in doing that. Okay. And you were a great James Bond villain. So we knew that too. Okay. 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 Moving forward, town staff, everything was brilliant for both Community Day and also for the USDGA tournament. The Disc Golf Association had a professional tournament here. I was hoping maybe we would get ESPN 8 here, the Ocho. It didn't happen, but it was well attended. They had 72 players. It lasted for the entire day, and the park was stellar on part from their volunteer work and from staff's work, and it was very noticeable. And I got a lot of positive feedback from the Fred Rock folks. I did speak to Mr. Lindsay regarding some questions he had regarding the lagoon. Town staff and I have spoken, and the info that we're hoping for will be forthcoming from the I guess the contractor. I spoke to a neighbor of Community Park and heard their concerns about the tree trimming. And if I understand it correctly, at a forthcoming Arbor Day, the hope is to get some trees over there to get that moving forward to help create a further, I guess, a buffer of sorts between the park and the private homes, excuse me, plural there. To Mr. Deathridge, again, you go to every meeting. Thank you for doing that, keeping us on our toes. But additionally, the garden is profoundly wonderful to drive by in the morning. I look over there and I just see something new, and it's really nice to see. And the original garden is cranking. Every space is full there, which is a wonderful thing to see. I did go to MML, the Maryland Municipal League training. I'll share information about that in our next meeting briefly. It was profoundly useful. If you don't know what MML is, they do a best practices seminar for a number of days, and it is very helpful to learn what you're doing is right and to learn what you're doing wrong and try to amend it. And that's where their seminars are very helpful. I was lucky enough to go to the program open space meeting in Middletown a month ago. I was out for the June meeting. I didn't get to share that. I was able to bring back money for town, but let's qualify that. I didn't do the legwork. It was all done by town staff. So thank you, town staff, for your hard work in preparing basically all of our necessary documentation. And I think we came back with a pretty solid sum of $120,000 approximately, which is going to be used for parks and recreation items. Finally, yes, I am running for mayor, and I look forward to the opportunity to run for that office. And I'll leave it at that. So thank you. And now we turn to the mayor. Mr. Mayor, yourself.
All right, thank you very much. Here we go again. President Walbrecker, thank you for the wonderful Heritage Day, and also to Cliff, outgoing president. You guys did a spectacular job, and it's terrific. We have National Night Out coming up in the first week of August, and we'll have more on that. And follow our Facebook and social media on that. I want to thank Mrs. Miller, excuse me, Ms. Miller, on our rec community for Storybook Trail ribbon cutting. And we had the ribbon cutting this last week, and it was it's a very nifty little addition to our park. The Catholic high school is going very well. They're pretty close to having something up to 20 students for this fall, and it'll be held in the St. Joseph's Parish Hall. If everything still got a couple moving parts there. Mr. Ritz, we have a couple of people joining us. We have Lynn Phelan, who stepped down as athletic director at the Mount. We have a couple of people. There's a lot of turnover this year with us, and Ken Robinson, K-Rob, has moved down. Assistant athletic director is going to be the athletic director at Catholic University. Bob Brennan, advancement. I had the occasion to work with him on many occasions, and especially with some of the things the Mount is doing with his sisters. Advancement, stellar career he had at the Mount. And next year in July, President Trainer from the Mount will also be moving out. So it's the tide rolls in, the tide goes out. Everything has its own season. Talked to Conrad Weaver on Sunday, He is due here on his 3,300-mile bike trek from Oregon to Ocean City. He'll be here on Thursday. And I think it's had to check on this with Vigilant Host, but I think he's due at Vigilant Host at 1 o'clock. And there'll be a showing of his film, PTS for firemen and policemen. Have another showing. He stopped like 61 times going across, not 61, he went about 61 miles a day. I believe that's what he told me. And every time they would stop, they would have a showing of this film at fire halls all the way across the country. And he's quite an amazing member of our community, and Emmy Award winning, and for one of his films, and really be exciting to see him. You won't recognize him when he's here. Let's see, August, the seminarians from the Mount will take over a wing. And my wife, who walks every morning with our dog, says they're all Saturday, Sunday, they are working around the clock to make sure this happens this August. They'll take one of the wings over here at the Daughters of Charity, and it's the first of 3 projects. Excuse me, the first of 3 projects they have over there. Another one will be their museum area and heritage area, but they're doing that now. And then I think in next year they will have they'll open up their not dental assistants, medical assistants and nursing school. So the Mount is coming down here. We showed them 303 back in 2012, 2013. They almost bought that, and the goal is always to bring the Mount back downtown, and working with Bob a little bit on this. It's terrific to see that they're here, they're coming back downtown. It'll add a lot of vitality and a lot of water usage that we'll need. And I think that's all news I have that's fit to print. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay. We turn now to public comments. So, sorry.
Gosh, darn.
So, Ms. Walbrecker, are you reserving the opportunity to speak when something comes forward based on your item? Okay, understood, and I'll make sure that it's there. And for Ms. Frey, am I saying that correctly? Fry, I'm sorry. Okay, you'll be speaking during the consent agenda regarding childcare for the community access. Okay, so we don't have anybody else signed up for public comment beyond that, correct? Okay, very good. All right, so we press forward. So we have a number of items for administrative business. We have the presentation of daycare options. We have a proclamation, and those are our 2 items. So first, Ms. Fry, I ask you to come forward. Thank you for your patience with the name.
All the time.
Oh dear, sorry. Thanks.
No, there we go. All right. Well, good evening. I'm Leslie Fry. Thank you for your willingness to learn about barriers that families are experiencing for families with young children living in Emmitsburg. And I do want to make a comment. My presentation is more about the lack of childcare in Emmitsburg. So I just want to be really clear on that. I'll be mentioning some data for Frederick County, specifically Emmitsburg, just as we start to look at how we can begin to help families a little bit better seeking childcare. So I speak as both a resident and a professional. I've lived in Emmitsburg since 2007, and I currently serve Frederick County Public Schools as the supervisor of early childhood education. So our family was very fortunate when we moved to Emmitsburg in 2007 because the Emmitsburg Early Learning Center was a thriving hub for working families. My kids met some of their best friends there, and we could go to work each day knowing that while we were out contributing to society, our children were being exposed to social environments and gaining school readiness skills. The Blue School, as it was lovingly referred to, closed its doors in 2014. In 2020, the Blueprint for Maryland's Future was signed into legislation in Maryland. Of the 5 pillars of this monumental legislation, early childhood is the first, and in my opinion, the most important body of work. It considers our most vulnerable citizens, our youngest children. The Blueprint seeks to provide free full-day pre-K for income qualifying 3 and 4-year-olds across the state through a mixed delivery system. A mixed delivery system means private childcare providers and public schools work to provide choice for families in selecting the right environments for their children. Providing a full day of high quality care eases the cost of childcare for many Maryland families that are living in poverty. And more recently, MSDE includes families representing ALICE households. ALICE households are asset limited, income constrained, employed. In 2019, the United Way of Frederick compiled a report that serves as a snapshot of economic conditions across the county and what families need to earn in the current economy to survive. ALICE families live above the federal poverty level, but below the basic cost of living. Emmitsburg has one of the highest populations of ALICE families in Frederick County. In 2020, 48% of Emmitsburg residents are living below the ALICE threshold. The only 2 other census tracts in Frederick County that have higher percentage of ALICE families are Sibyllesville and Rocky Ridge. The CDC recently released the 2022 Social Vulnerability Index. The SVI ranks a census tract on 15 social factors, including poverty, lack of vehicle access, crowded housing, and a number of other situations that put families at risk. You'll see from one of the documents that I provided that Emmitsburg ranks as one of the most vulnerable communities in terms of socioeconomic status and housing type and transportation. In the 2022 Frederick County Community Health Needs Assessment Report, an Emmitsburg resident's life expectancy is 78.5 years, while a Southern Walkersville resident lives on average to 87 years. We are 28th out of 36 towns in life expectancy in Frederick County. So in the definite bottom half of that list. The stress of just getting by week to week, month to month, as many of us have lived in our lives, is very stressful, and it certainly impacts health incomes for both parents and their young children. Nobel Prize winner Charles Heckman's work is related to economics and human development, and it encompasses decades of research that shows a 13% ROI, or return on investment, in early childhood, in high quality birth to 5 early childhood programs. Communities that invest in early childhood realize a wide variety of life outcomes, such as better health, lower crime, higher income, higher IQ, better schooling, and the increase in a mother's income. What is Emmitsburg willing to do to take care of our youngest children? Emmitsburg serves as a bedroom community for many residents. The average commute time for Emmitsburg workers is 35 minutes. This means it's difficult for families to adhere to the traditional school day hours. Before and after school care is imperative for our workforce families. One of the quickest impacts Emmitsburg could have on the childcare crisis is to support efforts to get before and after school care into our community. Families living in ALICE income thresholds are qualified to receive Maryland Child Care scholarships. So it really eases the burden for families leaving Emmitsburg to go to work every day, where they can get scholarships to help subsidize the care for their children before and after school. Ms. Madigan, the principal at Emmitsburg, currently reports that there are 18 families in need of before care at Emmitsburg Elementary this coming school year. 10 of those families also need after school care. So efforts must be made to encourage childcare providers and early learning centers to open in Emmitsburg. These small businesses serve the community in so many ways. At this point in time, there are 3 licensed family childcares in Emmitsburg, with the potential to serve 23 children birth to age 5. So we need more. We need high quality care. I would love to see some action taking. If there's a committee or some type of work that can be done, I am ready and willing and available to support the work. It's not only, as I said, part of my professional life, but I really care about what families go through when they are paying so much for childcare. You will see in one of the other charts what the cost of childcare is, and it can at times be 1/3 of a family income. So I'm really passionate about helping this. Again, I think the first first task is to entice some folks to come in for before and after care, and then really work on how do we get centers and small businesses into our town that can support our families that way. So thank you. You have questions?
Anybody have questions or comments?
Thanks. It was not well. It should be a lot better, but I'll take it.
So I brought this up at MML and I discussed this with more than a few people from state agencies, and they did mention the scholarship program,
Mhm.
and that's definitely worth our effort. Some communities are subsidizing it through their town governments, which is something I think we will look at. The other piece is they talked about partnerships with local schools to develop daycare providers. And I'm aware that Catoctin High School has a program, but we don't have any pipeline to our community yet that I'm aware of. And that could just be me unaware of it. The other piece is they wanted to know about FCC and that they'd be more of a civil partner than maybe some other private entity. And I think the Mount might have something that might be useful to us, and Hood College might have something. But I'm really thinking about FCC as, you know, a fellow citizen in the county in that respect. And that's not to disparage either of the private schools at all.
Sure.
Any thoughts on that? I mean,
Sure.
does that hold water in your view, or is it?
Sure. Well, I'll start with Catoctin High School. They do have a Child Development Associates program. Traditionally, for years, there has been a little preschool there where families can drop off kids for a few hours. Typically, there's a parent not working that can meet that schedule, drop them off at 9, pick them up at 11:30. The high school kids working towards a child development 90-hour certificate would have access to those kids while they were in there. They typically did a craft, a snack, and parents picked back up. Well, Maryland, the state last year said that those are unlicensed childcares, that we can't just without a licensing procedure drop children off at school. So we have converted 4 of those high school programs to be full day pre-K programs. The goal with those high school programs is to get kids out into the community to serve their hours at private centers, which Brittany Fritz, who used to be up here, is in Thurmont now, and she has multiple interns every year serving in her facility, which is really nice because that's also extra staffing that doesn't cost her anything. But so there's stuff happening with that. Now, what a high school kid would graduate with a CDA, which is a Child Development Associates, which would allow them to work in a childcare facility. But what we really need is to find our providers and our entrepreneurs that want to start a small business and jump into this childcare game when it's been a rough go for the past 4 years for childcare facilities. So there's not a lot of people looking to get into that. Maryland is working to improve that, but we do hope to be churning out more and more high school students that will graduate with the CDA. So we are building up that workforce, I think, and that's part of that blueprint legislation that I talked about. FCC has a great program. I've actually been working with their center there to look and see if we can put some 3- and 4-year-old programs on their campus. As far as getting them up here, again, we just don't really have the facilities for them to either get the experiences or work at. So it's, again, trying to find the people that want to come here and open a center, or people that are here that want to open a facility. And then Mount St. Mary's, unfortunately, does not offer a degree in early childhood education. So teachers, in order to teach anything under kindergarten, you have to have an early childhood certificate. I have worked with the Mount over the years to try to entice them to add that as one of their certification areas. They haven't yet. So until they do that, I think we're missing a big opportunity by having them right here with us, and even having maybe a lab classroom on their campus where their students are also getting hours.
Mr. Mayor, yes, sir.
When you speak of Emmitsburg, is it the election district or the town?
It's the census tract. So it's the zip code and whatever, I believe it's by zip code.
Okay.
Is that how the census tract works?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Demographic.
Yeah, we were busing kids up from North Frederick Elementary to fill the seats in Emmitsburg. That's been a back and forth.
Because it was full one time.
It was.
Microphone, please. Thank you, sir.
It was full. They've had an issue with staffing, and then they just had an issue getting families in our area that wanted to use the services right there in our area.
Right.
As we went to full day pre-K a couple years ago, those families that qualify by income for Head Start absolutely qualify for any of our full day pre-Ks. Many families have children already going to that school on those same buses and the same hours. So bit of a, I don't want to say a conflict of interest, but the school system's able to house a lot more children and provide the transportation that Head Start may not be able to. I have asked Head Start though, if they would come back up. I think there's a church that was willing, or that somebody looked into possibly putting another Head Start classroom. Not sure what happened with that, but I have been talking to Stacy Wance, who also lives here in town and is the director at Head Start in Frederick. So we're looking at that again, but I think they were busing 13 out of 18 kids from Frederick City for overflow. So it just didn't make sense
Yeah,
for them.
we've been working with them for a couple of years. The Lions Club has with
Mm.
vision
Right, sure.
uh, tests. We do all the vision care for the children from 3 to 4 year olds.
Great.
So we go to all the schools that they have in Frederick County.
Yeah, you all definitely support us. And we have MOUs now with childcare providers that are jumping into getting state pre-K funds, because what happens when they have a family that qualifies, if they are participating in the state funded pre-K, that family can drop their child off at a childcare center. They may have to pay for an hour before school and an hour after, but that 6.5 hour day in between is free. So families with 3 and 4 year olds, that's really, as I said, a huge burden lifted, especially if I can get some scholarship money for that before and after hour. I can do my work and not be stressed about, handling that part of my life. So
Mr. Ritz.
This point,
Oh,
excuse me, I'm
Sorry, Mr. Are you okay?
Boys
Yeah.
and girls.
Mr. Mayor, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Actually, it sounds like we're on the
Mm.
same page. You go ahead.
Just a very disappointed Boys and Girls Club backed out of here. It was gathering strength, and we worked so hard to get them up here, and then that's one side of this, of taking care of the working parent.
yes. And I think my understanding, it depends on who you talk to. I've heard that they had a hard time keeping staff up here. As we know, childcare is not a high paying field. It's not really even a living wage. So I think they had a hard time getting people here to stay in Emmitsburg with those hours. Just the before hours and the after hours doesn't work with a lot of people. So now that Miss Madigan has some more numbers, when we checked back in kind of mid-year, it didn't seem like too many families really needed that support. But now that we're up to at least 20, the Boys and Girls Club threshold, or it may not even be Boys and Girls Club, the YMCA has their before and after care. Their threshold is they need 13 kids in those seats for it to be worth it for them to put a program there. So we're communicating with both of them. We may be asking for letters of support, other people to reach out and also say this is a need in our community.
That answered my question.
Okay.
I was for a reminder, what happened with Boys and Girls Club? Was it a lack of interest?
I think
for
there was
parents
just
or-
a few, not enough families. I think they maybe slowly dropped out. And then again, it depends. We think that it was not enough students. They said that they couldn't keep the staffing up here. So.
Okay.
So here's the question. So you've got the state level funding, the scholarship program based on income.
Yep.
So you have a threshold there. And that is an incentive for a business owner, assumingly. I mean, you have a subsidy there from that end of it. But are there any seed, is there any seed funding or grant money to help somebody start this entity? Or again, I want to go back to like the pipeline. If we have a pipeline, it feels
Sure.
like it can be done. And like you said, with the Catoctin students in Thurmont, they extend the dollar of the business owner because they offer such a benefit, like you're teaching them. Yeah. So you're vested in them, but at the same time, they're providing that service to those households. And I'll go one other thing. I'm not for you, but just to extend this further for the thinking, in the discussions we had at MML, one of the pieces that just struck with me was that some folks find themselves homeless because they can't work, because they don't have a safe place or the means to have daycare for their children. So the problem snowball. So, and I'm sure you guys are aware of that, but for me, that was like, that was news to me. And that was stunning to me. And I worry that where we are with our Alice reports, that we are more at risk than we're aware of at the moment. So any optimism, any news regarding what the state might be doing to provide incentives just to open the doors of a facility?
I think the state is lagging a little bit. We have been expanding full day pre-K in Frederick County Public Schools since 2016. The state in 2020 passed legislation that said they want a mixed delivery system. So they want providers and schools. We have already taken a bulk of the 4-year-olds out of our childcare programs because we're free. So we actually were responsible for a pretty big hit on our local childcare programs all across the state. They kind of lost 4-year-olds. When you're looking at childcare, most of your money is earned with your higher ratios. So when I can have 1 to 6, I'm going to make more money than like an infant. I need 1 to 2. I can have 1 adult for 2 infants. So there's not a lot of money in infants for childcare. So the state is starting to incentivize childcare and people coming into the childcare workforce. It's a hard sell. Getting into those state funds is a lot of work. It's a grant. I have a consultant right now that I'm paying to work with Thermont Childcare to try to get them under the grant. I'll continue to rewrite as often as possible to get some, just to incentivize a little bit, to make that workload a little bit easier for them. Most of those directors or owners, they're also teaching every day because their staff calls out. It's a snowball for them as well. But I do think, I just learned of a program today where if you work in a childcare setting for a minimum of 10 hours a week, Maryland will pay for your either associate's degree or bachelor's degree. They'll pay tuition and books. So that's a pretty good incentive. I think of our kids graduating with their CDAs. If we can go get them right into the childcare workforce, they'll be getting paid while they work, but then a free education. So I think Maryland's getting there. I think they need to do a lot more. There's a lot of shifting at the state level within departments. We have a superintendent that's been here for a few years, and there's been a lot of movement. I would like to see the Office of Child Care and the Office of Early Childhood come together because it's really both of these entities. So there's slow progress. How's that? Not enough, not enough.
Commissioner
yet.
O'Donnell, you have the principal from the elementary school. She has her hand up on Zoom.
Oh, good.
Whenever you're ready for her.
Sure.
Thanks.
Ms. Monahan, if you're available, sure.
Madigan.
I'm sorry. All right.
I wish I could see them because.
Yeah, right.
Thank you. I apologize for that. I wanted to comment on the Boys and Girls Club. When they initially left us, they had 13 students enrolled in after-school care. It was really staffing for them and not so much the number of families who were in need. There was a point where we had 16 students enrolled, but they couldn't accept any more because of the lack of staffing. So that really was the concern there. Our primary concern right now, I think, as we're looking at daycare, is also access for our pre-K and K students. Out of that 18 that are requiring before care, 5 of those students fall into that 4 to 5 year old range, with a lot of daycare providers will not even consider them, which is another area that we're looking at. We're currently accepting pre-K not only from Emmitsburg, but overflow from other schools. So we will definitely be in need of before and after care to maintain those 2 pre-K programs.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Monahan?
I have a quick question.
Yes, Commissioner Bowman Pollitt.
I know when Leslie and Amber and I have had a chance to speak in the past, one of the things that came up was a location. Is there even physical space for childcare to, occur? So looking around the town, what spaces would be available to even just a room? I think we started just with that, not necessarily a building, but just a room. And Leslie, please correct me if I'm wrong, but it may be, step one, looking simply just for physical space, step one, and building from there. Am I correct in that?
I think that's a great starting place. I mentioned her already, Brittany Fritz, who ran a very nice center here in Emmitsburg for years. is looking to open a second center. She's got the one in Thurmont. Her and her husband are very good at their business. And if there was space, I do think she might jump, but there may be other people that are, yes, incentivized to say, I want to come in and start having that space already is one of the huge speed bumps that they would have had to gone over. So yes, that's a great thought. Thanks for bringing that back up.
Brittany Fritz also has 10 students currently for this coming school year who are going to be transported from Thurmont Child Care Center to Emmitsburg. Last year she had 13. So she already has families who trust her, and I know she'd be willing to open another center in the area.
So that means an Emmitsburg family is driving their child to Thurmont in the morning, dropping them off so that those kids get on the Thurmont childcare bus and come back up to school for their day and then go back down at the end of the day where the family can pick them up. So another burden for families and really undue time for the children. So that's great information. And I do want to plug, which I should have really done throughout this, is that there are lots of seats at Emmitsburg for pre-K for 4-year-olds. They are supposed to be income-based slots, but there are 40 seats over there. And right now, I think 13 of them are filled. We had families from Urbana and Oakdale last year driving their children back and forth every day because there was a slot. So I talked to a family that just moved up to Brookside, and they're not really interested in their 4-year-old going to school all day. And I understand that it's not a need for them, but they would get a seat in there this year. So for everyone to let everyone that they know, if they have a 4-year-old for or before September 1st this year, very high likelihood that their child can get a seat at Emmitsburg for their pre-K year, especially if Emmitsburg is their home school. They just funnel right into kindergarten from there and already have their routines down. So spread the word on that.
I have a question. Has anybody talked to anyone at Frederick County government yet? The reason I ask is they own this building. You know, there's a lot of space downstairs potentially.
Mayor,
I think Head Start was there.
I believe the mayor did.
Okay.
You reached out to Frederick County about space.
Yes, there's,
Mhm,
it's kind of been, the seniors are kind of
mhm.
taking over the whole downstairs, and I think sometimes I'm speaking as a senior that, you know, we vote and children don't. They don't want to let up any of that space down there.
Well, I do have a vision, a personal dream is a multi-generational facility where we have a pre-K and a nursing facility all in one area, because there's a lot that can happen between those. So maybe we could try something. I've always thought of our nursing home across the street and how nice it would be for them to have the enlightenment of little children all day and vice versa, our littles getting to be around our seniors. So
A lot of things are happening at shopping center space. There is a vacancy out there, but I don't know if it only has the one bathroom. I don't know if it gets into that strange stuff, but
So, Mr. Mayor, the only thing I would add is if Head Start's not coming back, there is a space downstairs that's not being used and it's going to waste.
the other use we
Great.
were considering, they said there wasn't any, but maybe. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
well, thank you for that. And that's already licensed for children.
Right, it's an approved.
That's where, when we get into shopping malls, I looked at Ollie's to turn it into a facility and it was a no-go. There's no playground and too much retrofitting, but
We do have another building coming available before long. When Christ Community Church builds their new building, they'll be moving out of their facility, which has a playground area and everything too.
where is that?
Lincoln Avenue.
Lincoln Avenue. beside the
Okay.
pool,
By the-
Just right up from the.
Oh, okay. I think that's, okay. Fantastic.
I mean, is that something too that we could look at, even before they move out, if the daycare is needed Monday through Friday and Pastor John has his services on the weekend? I don't know if that's worth conversation with Pastor John moving forward. Just throwing that out there as an idea.
I do think they have a kitchen and everything there.
It's a great idea.
Service, and they do have outside playground.
Fenced also,
Mhm.
parking also, and proximity to the park also.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of
Great.
pluses there.
Okay. Okay. Well, thanks for the think tank and letting me speak a little bit. I'll be back.
Thank you, truly. Okay, we turn now to our second administrative business item for consideration. A proclamation honoring Cliff Sweeney for his contributions to the Lions Club and Town of Emmitsburg. Mr. Mayor. Oh, all right. Mr. Sweeney, is it okay if I read this to you?
Yeah, sure.
All right, I will do that then, sir. Proclamation. Let it hereby be known on the occasion of this recognition of services, this 10th day of July, 2023, the town of Emmitsburg hereby extends sincere gratitude and heartfelt appreciation to Clifford Sweeney for the services provided to the Lions Club as a member since 2008 and president from 2010 to 2023. It is hoped that Mr. Sweeney will continue to be a presence and resource to the Emmitsburg community for many years to come. Signed, Mr. Donald N. Briggs, Mayor, and myself, President, Board of Commissioners. Public comment.
This is the new president.
Oh, the new
That's
president.
fine. It's fine.
If we can- Yes, ma'am.
Hello, Diane Walbrecker, 535 West Main Street in Emmitsburg, and I just wanted to come and lend my open and full hearty support to the proclamation for Lion Cliff and what he has done for our club over the past years. He is an energizer bunny. If you guys know, he can sometimes just like keep going and everybody's going, what? Anyway, and I just wanted to say on behalf of the Lions Club that I really appreciate the work that you did, Cliff, over the years. And I hope you'll still participate in as many things as you can, because you really have made a difference to the Lions Club and to our community and our citizens. And we appreciate it. So thank you.
Congratulations, sir. So we turn now to our consent agenda. Filing of the 2022 Planning Commission report. Mr. Ritz, do we turn to you or do we turn to staff?
Turn to staff.
Staff, okay, thanks, sir.
Okay, so this is the Planning Commission annual report for the calendar year 2022. It's required by the state to submit a report for the previous calendar year. It's a pretty short and sweet report. Do you want me to go over every single item? Basically, it's reporting the number of permits issued and any growth related changes that took place last year, which includes ordinance number 22-01 to amend the parts of the comprehensive plan to delete B1 neighborhood commercial zoning to zoning in Brookfield. And it asks to confirm whether all the Planning Commission members have completed an educational training course, which they have. And that's basically what the report is. And it's being filed with the Board of Commissioners as the town does every year.
Thank you. Any comments from the board? Hearing none. Thank you. Ms. Willis, do we need to vote to accept this? I mean, this is just reporting, correct? So we don't have to correct. Okay, very good. Okay, thank you. All right, we now turn to the treasurer for the treasurer's report. Oh,
Just stepped out.
okay. The report will be forthcoming. Why don't we then, we would move to our agenda items. Why don't we give the treasurer a few moments and we'll see where we are. Do we want to move to a
I can
recess
go-
for
I
2
can-
minutes?
I can go over it if you want.
Sure, if that's permissible, please.
Sure. So this is the cash activity report as of June 27th, 2023. Beginning June 1st, there was an operating balance of $8,731,340. We had deposits in the amount of $46,574, withdrawals in the amount of $297,121. We ended with an operating balance forward of $8,480,793. Listed are the top checks from the month of June. As you can see, they're all listed here if you have any questions.
Do we have any questions for staff related to this from the commissioners on Zoom or in the room? Okay. Okay. Okay.
No question. I was just trying to stall.
Thank you, sir. All right. So I don't believe we have any questions for staff related to the treasurer's report.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Sweeney, I'm sorry. We're on page 27.
Have you done it already?
We have, Ms. Willets stepped in for yourself, sir.
Oh, okay, thank you. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I wanted to catch her. They have a big meeting coming up for the Head Start, and I wanted her to be able to go to the meeting. That's why I stepped out for a minute.
Perfect sense. Okay, so at this time, we turn to our agenda items.
Actually, yeah.
We have to vote on
We-
this.
we
I'm
sque-
sorry, yeah.
We squeezed number
Okay.
J, letter J on the bottom of page 27. It's the planning commission report.
There really is no
Okay.
update. Mrs. San already covered it, so there's nothing to, it's a previous page. They haven't squeezed
Oh,
it
we
to the bottom here,
reversed it. I got you. Okay.
It's hiding down there. So there's really nothing to discuss. It's an update for our meetings. She already went over it in our,
Perfect. Okay.
we normally do.
All right.
Thanks.
Any questions from the board related to this item, or are we okay to move on to our regular agenda items? Hearing no questions, we move forward to our agenda items. We turn to agenda item number 1. For the record, I'm on page 28. And we are here for discussion of the fiscal year 2024 budget and the allocation of salaries.
Thank you. I'll just be brief. After the last town meeting, staff was directed to look at the fiscal year 24 budget and the allocation of salaries. So upon doing so, I met with Cole. I reached out to several town managers, including Walkersville, since they were specifically mentioned. I reached out to the town of Thurmont, the town of Brunswick. The town of Middletown is in transition. Their lifetime town managers just retired, so I didn't get much out of them. I spoke with got some information from MML. Just a quick synopsis. In the water fund, our salaries, overtime wages, insurance and benefits were reduced by about 90,000 from fiscal year 23 to 24, greatly due to Mr. Fissel's retirement. The water rate study that was conducted took into consideration a 5% labor cost increase for the next 5 years. The water rate study also took into account Dan's salaries and benefits, which have been significantly reduced. We received an MML budget memo number 2 on June 6th. And basically it stated, according to US Bureau of Labor and Statistics, the CPI increased by 4.9% for the 12-month period ending in April 23. They strongly urge users to consider adopting the national average CPI for use in their escalator clauses. So I spoke with Mr. Williams via email from Walkersville to see how they budget their salaries. And I spoke to Mr. Humerick in Thurmont, and I received emails from, I believe her last name's Mortana. She's the new town manager in Brunswick. Basic information: Brunswick, Middletown, and Thurmont. They adopt the same budgeting practices that the town of Emmitsburg does, the same accounting principles. They have operators and water and sewer designated, and then they allocate other staff members out, including their director of public works, their town manager, their finance director, etc. They also allocate all expenses related to their water plant into the water fund, including postage, maintenance, routine maintenance, everything associated to the water fund is allocated. Part of our research from Cole and I, we also had a meeting with Michelle Mills and Addie Blickenstaff, our auditors. They are on Zoom to answer any questions that anybody might have. Walkersville specifically, since that was the one that was brought up, they only supply water. They do not have a sewer plant. They have 4 specific employees paid through the water plant or water fund, excuse me, 2 full-time water operators, a billing clerk, and half of their director of public works. They do have other water operators that are on a weekly rotation. They currently charge $100 a year assessment fee to pay for their new water plant. They only bill twice a year for water, so the comparisons are a little bit difficult. In November, they're considering continuing the assessment fee as well as increasing their rates. Their rates have not been increased since 2016. They are currently operating in over a 300 approximately $314,000 deficit in their water fund. Again, Thermont and Brunswick pretty much mirror, have the same budgeting and accounting principles that we follow as far as allocations and designations. Again, the auditors are on the Zoom if you have any questions of them.
So board members, do we have any questions for our auditors about best practices or the suggested modifications that came up in the June 5th meeting?
Yes, I have several. I feel like the information I just heard was just a reiteration of what we heard last time. And I'm looking for, where is the line? Where is the line between what is charged to the water fund and what is charged to the general fund? Not just salaries, but anything. And how different towns approach that. Because, for example, the amount of time that I spent as a commissioner investigating the water fund and looking into that, would part of my salary then be charged to the water fund? Yes or no?
No, it wouldn't, because you're salaried
So,
and you're strictly under the legislative department.
so how would, like, the accountant, for example, he's hired to do an accountant job. So how is that any different?
Because
For
he's doing
example,
water billing, sewer billing, managing all the water accounts. Actually, if Michelle or Addie want to speak up and maybe can explain it a little bit better than I can, the purpose of establishing an enterprise fund for your water and sewer services and the reasons that we budget the way that we do.
All right, I'll start, Addie, and then you can certainly chime in as applicable. Many years ago,
Well,
the
hold on
town-
for a second. I'm sorry to interrupt. Ms. Mills, could you identify yourself for the record as you move forward, please?
Certainly.
Thank
Good evening, Michelle Mills, Audit Principal with De Leon and Stang. Thank you for inviting us this evening to answer questions. Many years ago, the town established the Water and Sewer funds to recognize the importance of separate tracking of those associated activities. And so this was probably done, gosh, I'm not even sure, 20 plus years ago, if not longer. Recognizing, right, that the intent of an enterprise fund is to make sure that you're accumulating the cost and assessing user fees appropriately. And the enterprise funds are designed to operate like a commercial business. So you want to make sure you're properly capturing your cost and allocating cost appropriately, because if you're not getting the data that you need to set your user fees. I mean, it's my understanding that the fees have not been raised for many years. And again, as a result, it would certainly make sense why the water fund would be showing losses and or time for it to reevaluate and look at your fees. So when it comes to staff time, employees are required to keep timesheets that reflect their hours worked. And that's the basis for how the costs are getting captured into the accounting system. The employees sign their timesheets, kind of attesting that this is how their time was spent. Most of the employees are direct charge, meaning that they may only operate in one department. But those who do operate in more than one department, their time does get allocated based on, again, it is an estimate as to how they kind of do a step back on how their time was spent. So in the case of the accountant, he's touching all funds for the town. So it would certainly make sense that his time gets recorded to the general fund as a finance function, as well as the water and sewer funds, because he's overseeing the water billing process. Does that help answer part of your question?
it does. I just don't necessarily agree with it. I have questions about the timesheets. I understand that there are signed timesheets and it's every 2 weeks. Is that correct?
Yes.
Why is that not daily?
The
I know-
timesheets are done every 2 weeks, but they are completed daily. So you have to allocate, everybody that's an hourly employee allocates hours. So say Monday, you have 8 hours and I spent 3 hours in legislative. I put 3 hours in legislative. I spent 2 hours in parks. I put 2 hours under parks. I spent an hour in the water fund, I spent an hour in the sewer fund, and I'm missing something, and an hour in the streets. And each employee then completes each day and puts the hours they worked in each department. And we turn time sheets in because we're paid every 2 weeks.
Correct. I understand that. However, so what you're telling me is every hour of every day is accounted for before those 2 weeks.
On their timesheet, they account for every hour that they work on the timesheet, whether it's the 8 hours, the 10 hours, or if they use leave, those hours are accounted for too. And it's broken
Where-
out by department.
Where are they accounted for if they complete them every 2 weeks?
On their timesheet.
So they do keep a daily timesheet.
Yeah, well, our timesheet is a 2-week timesheet with broken out in 14 days. So 5 days a week. So 10 days are allocated for daily, and they turn them in, and then they're signed off by their supervisor, then they're signed off by me, and then they're processed by the accounting department.
Okay,
Yes,
because that's the first I've heard of that, because last time you said that you have them keep track on their Outlook calendar. At the last meeting, you advised your staff to do it on an Outlook calendar. And now I'm being told it's on a daily timesheet.
Yeah, the time is kept daily and processed bi-weekly because the town pays every 2 weeks.
So it's kept daily on an Outlook calendar.
Oh, it might be on Outlook. We don't look at Outlook. We look at the executed timesheet.
Okay, so we don't know for sure if it's being done daily or not. You don't know that.
The time record is designed for them to enter their time on a daily basis, and then they submit it at the end of the pay period for processing.
What checks and balances do we have in place to make sure that that's done accurately?
I mean, employees' time is required to be approved by their supervisors. Supervisors should be aware of where their employees are working and spending their time. So the employee is attesting to their time as well as supervisors approving that time. Other than that, I mean, I don't think there's any extra checks and balances besides the employees, right, signing their name that they're attesting to the correct time of where they spent based on their direct time and effort.
This is Cole, each of the hard copy timesheets that are turned in are signed by the employee, signed by the direct supervisor, and stamped off as a final check from Kathy, the town manager. Then they're processed, and only when that's done does payroll get posted.
So you could go into everybody's Outlook calendars for the last year and see hourly what has been done.
I don't recall ever saying that everybody uses an Outlook calendar. I know my water and sewer staff does not use an Outlook calendar because they're out in the field. They don't spend their time on their Outlook. I know that
I'm not asking about water and sewer. I know you had said that you directed your people that are under you to use their Outlook calendar. So I'm just wondering, in Outlook calendar for the last year, would I see hourly documentation?
I don't recall ever saying that because I don't believe I've ever directed them to use the Outlook calendar. I've suggested that it's a good tool. I have a calendar journal that I write down everything I do every day with the hours. That's how I keep track of mine.
Just personally, the way I keep track of my hours is on a daily basis, day to day, so that I make sure that everything is accurate at the end of the 2-week period. And that's, that way I have a confidence that the timesheet's correct.
Commissioner, I have a question. Are you looking to modify the process, for example, to have each staffer account for each hour on a digital system? Or
Okay.
are you questioning the veracity of the reports so we can identify fund sources?
So my issue is, and I've stated this at the last meeting, we just raised water rates a lot. And when I found out that about 15 of 17 employees charge a portion or a percent of their salary to the water fund, it seemed higher than what I would, or most people in town, I believe, would have expected that to be. And that's something I'm interested in is, for example, Walkersville, Brunswick, I don't care, pick a town, of the number of employees they have. What, like, let's say Walkersville has 12 town employees. How many of those employees charge a percentage of their salary to the water fund compared to Emmitsburg, for example? Because in the water audit report, it did take into account a 5% inflation. And with the recommended 4% COLA and the potential to a 1 to 3% merit-based increase, we were looking at potentially a 7% increase in salary, which would have gone over the 5% recommended that was factored in from the water audit report. So we would be going over that 5% recommendation, which would be dipping into the money that would help bring us back up into the black. So if there's a way to shift where the money is coming from, so we're not draining the water fund comparatively to from like other towns might be doing it differently, that was something I wanted to pursue. Not that I'm against COLA. I think everybody, needs to be able to afford to buy their $7 eggs at the grocery store. But at the same time, raising the water rates and knowing that a potential 7% increase in salaries is going through was a little hard for several residents to swallow, which is why they questioned, and I'm passing those questions along. I understand that there is a decrease in the amount of salaries that we're paying out as a town collectively because we had 2 senior members of town retire, and therefore their replacements may not be making the same salary that they did before. But at the same time, I would think that that savings should be rolled back into the water fund so we can trend the black faster, rather than using that as a justification as to why we should go over that 5% that was recommended in the water audit report. And then having said that, finding out if there is a percentage that's charged, how is that percentage figured out? The last meeting, it was mentioned maintaining it on a calendar. It sounds like everybody kind of does it differently. So what checks and balances do we have in place that the percentage that is indeed being charged to the water fund is accurate, is not an estimation? I've had several, my father was a contractor for years, and he not only tracked every hour of his day to justify his job, he saw that as justification for his job, number one, and number two, exactly where things needed to be billed accordingly. If we don't have a systemic way of doing that, that's for all these 15 employees who are charging, then I would think that would lead to some figures that are not exactly correct in what we're taking from the water fund percentage-wise from salaries.
Hey, Cole, would you mind, how many employees actually charge time to the water fund directly and or indirectly?
In the budget, it is about 15 employees, but I think that number shouldn't be, shouldn't throw people off, in that the 15 employees, they might have low percentages that go into water and sewer. We're just trying to be more accurate in people's time. There's certain positions where there might be 10% of their time has been budgeted there. Other people, it's 50% of their time. We try to be as accurate as possible on a position by position basis so that we can get a clear picture of where we think it might be at the end of the year. And as far as filling out the timesheets, the check on the timesheets are the employees themselves the direct supervisor who signs off on the timesheets, and, the town manager who takes a final look at it as we're processing the payroll every 2 weeks. On a quarterly basis, we review the financial statements overall so that we make sure that things look like they're where they should be year to date, first quarter, second quarter. During the third quarter, we gather together and have several meetings and take a look at the activity, usually around February, to try to gather all the numbers that we want to present for the next year's budget, which needs to, be passed by June for the coming fiscal year. So these types of numbers are looked at, they're looked at daily as people turn in their, fill out their timesheets.
We do reevaluate every single year. I know everybody recalls the discolored water episodes of 2019 and 2020. We had a lot of time billed to water because all our public works staff and our water and sewer staff spent a considerable amount of time in water fixing that problem. And since that's balanced out, come the next year, we reevaluate and what projects do we have coming this year. So in this fiscal year, we look at a new water clarifier. So you're going to need to budget some money in extra money in water. We have a new pump station. You need to budget more money in the sewer side between the Rudders pump station and the new pump stations coming online. So we look at the projects, we talk to the department heads, and what do you foresee for fiscal year 24? Do you foresee needing extra overtime in the water fund? We had the year with the drought when we spent thousands of dollars in overtime at the water plant because they couldn't handle it. The water was in bad shape coming out of the lake. So we talked to them and asked them, where do you foresee spending your time? We do our best to budget as accurately as possible, but we can't anticipate a major leak on Annandale Road that took the entire public works department and your water and sewer department, 8 to 10 hours.
Mr. Tabler, can I ask a question?
Certainly.
So if an employee brings or submits a timesheet and their supervisor sees that they've juxtaposed numbers, like for example, they're keenly aware that on Wednesday they were cutting grass in the park, and Wednesday afternoon for an hour they were assigned to a water task and water department task, and in error they had said 7 here, 1 there, and flipped it. The supervisor sees that, and if not the supervisor seeing it, it would be yourself, and then it would be the town manager. Is that accurate?
Well, we would need the direct supervisor to try to give us as accurate a timesheet as possible.
Okay.
When they turn those in every 2 weeks, so that we can have, so that we can code everything correctly into the accounting system.
So if the employee is told, hey, fix your hours, do they have to initial it showing that there was a mistake made on their part?
That does occur sometimes.
All right. And I know
it's not like, employees aren't perfect. They do hand in timesheets sometimes that as we're processing them, we might see that maybe a number doesn't add up. We make sure, I'm processing it.
Right.
I'm taking all the numbers, putting it on another Excel sheet, making sure all the numbers add up. There's several checks. The accounting tech Reese initially gets the timesheet, puts it into an Excel in all the different categories. I go behind her, check all her work that she does. She typically puts, and I do it many times also, in the payroll system and our paycheck system, put in all the hours. We produce payroll journals that list out all the hours by the departments. I make sure all those numbers match up with what we've looked at so far in the process, and that all gets coded into the accounting system.
Okay, Ms. Mills?
Yes.
In your experience through accounting and your years of experience, is there anything here that sounds anomalous in the accountability process of how the numbers are monitored and deemed accurate or inaccurate?
There are certainly many processing controls in place, as Cole was just describing, but ultimately it starts with the employee, right? Having an understanding as to the importance of a timesheet and making certain that they are capturing their time correctly. It also falls on the supervisor to do their job in reviewing, not just a superficial review, to be able to detect if an error was made. I'm not entirely certain if Cole in the accountant role would necessarily detect an error of that a supervisor missed. Cole, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Like if I take your example, Commissioner O'Donnell, about the cutting the grass, I'm not sure anyone in finance would know whether or not cutting the grass was supposed to occur on a Wednesday or not, but certainly a supervisor would know if there was an error in transposing the preparation of the timesheet.
So I do know Jared, who is in charge of the Water and Sewer Fund, tracks his employees' time and what projects they work on. I know Mr. Click is very methodical in tracking his staff's time and where they spend time. And if there's a water leak, a sewer leak, anything out of the ordinary, there's usually notes on their timesheet of the date of when they would have worked on something. For example, the one on Annandale Road, whatever day that was, there was a note on the bottom of the timesheet, 8 hours Annandale Road water leak. So those two are very methodical on and very precise on the timesheets they turn in. And I know a lot of their projects that they do as well. So I have all the faith in them that they are completing their timesheets accurately. They sign them, the supervisor signs them. It's in our employee handbook that you're required to complete an accurate timesheet. If you're falsifying your timesheet, then that's grounds for termination. And you sign for the handbook. So at some point you have to have faith in your staff that they're completing their timesheets accurately.
And then just because you've budgeted for employees to have a certain amount of their time going to the water or sewer fund, if they didn't actually do work in it for whatever reason, a project was delayed or just again, job description could have changed, the time's not going to go there just because it was budgeted there.
That part I understand. What I'm not getting answers to is how does Emmitsburg compare to other towns? For example, I was told at the last meeting that if the grass is cut around the water treatment plant, that's charged to water. Why is that not charged to, why is mowing charged to water? And therefore, looking at something as fine grained as that, where does the line stop? At what point do you say, you know what, I thought about water and sewer today, so I'm going to write it down. So what constitutes a water sewer charge versus a general fund charge? Is there, and I'm not questioning necessarily water and sewer employees in those departments. I would expect the majority of their time would obviously be dedicated in those areas. It's the other positions that most people in town wouldn't necessarily think would have a role in water and sewer. And I know that there's work behind the scenes. Is there any rule that precludes billing salaries to the general fund for water and sewer activities?
Well, you would not want to do that because then you're not capturing your cost appropriately. So if we know it's a water and sewer activity, it needs to go to the water and sewer fund. That's the whole purpose of an enterprise fund.
So that's my question, is what constitutes a water and sewer activity? I wouldn't have guessed mowing lawns would be a water sewer activity. So who makes that call? Where's the key? Where's the guideline? It's not clear to me. It sounds like it's subjective and it's up to the town. And if that's the case, I'm looking at, can we take some of these fine grain things that we're charging to the water fund and move them somewhere else? Like, I would not think I need to cut grass around water treatment plant is going to fall under water.
I mean, there certainly is some level of subjectivity, and I'm sure if you talk to each of the municipalities like Kathy did, their facts and circumstances would be different. So we don't really want to focus so much on what they're doing, but we want to focus on what makes most sense for the town of Emmitsburg and the types of activities that their employees are doing. Again, I'm not sure I could speak to how the water and sewer guys determine what's a water versus a public works. I mean, they would probably have very specific examples as to how they have been instructed to complete their time. Cool. I'm not sure if you, again, in speaking with any of their direct supervisors, might have some specific examples, but I'm sure, again, they have been given specific instructions. This constitutes a water fund activity and this constitutes a public works activity.
I'm concerned that nobody else seems to understand what those are. And the fact that you're asking that question is alarming to me too. So somebody somewhere knows, and that's my question.
Well, if it's
Can anybody
repairs and
answer that
maintenance related-
question?
If it's repairs and maintenance related to the function of the water plant, the grounds of the water plant, the interior of the water plant, the sole function of the water plant, then it gets billed to the water plant.
So that's
That's just plain and simple.
that's the geography of the location and that's the maintenance of the physical plant.
The maintenance of the physical plant, the repairs, the maintenance, the plant, and then you have the wells that are located in the mountains that need to be maintained. Anything that is specifically tied to the water plant, the operation of the water plant. If you're gonna let the grass grow and not cut the grass to the water plant, is that gonna inhibit the operation of your water plant? Potentially, yes. Eventually it will, especially up on the mountain. So that's basically the guidelines. If it's specifically tied to the operation of the plant and the deliverance of water to your town, then it is tied to the water plant.
So it
And-
is subjective. That's what I'm getting at. It is subjective. So what I would like to see is what we saw as an overview are percentages. This percentage of salary was charged to the water fund. What I don't know, what falls under that, is what constitutes activities underneath that percentage that was charged, number one. Number two, other things that fall under the water fund. Office supplies, pens, paper, cell phone charges, whatever it may be. I would love to see what is being billed to the water fund and then decide, does that have to do with direct upkeep of the water plant? Or
So I
is
looked
it
at
something can be shifted over to the general fund?
So I looked at Walkersville, since that was something that you brought up. They do charge about $4,000, and this is just strictly their water fund. They do charge $4,000 to office supplies and expenses. They charge $6,000 to postage. They have mileage charges. They have $10,000 for computer expenses, parts, tools and supplies, chemicals, safety, miscellaneous expenses. The idea is that you budget your expenses for the water fund so that you have an accurate representation of what is being spent in the water fund, so you can plan for the future. If you don't plan for the future, you're going to end up in the same boat you're in today and not having an accurate representation. And then when you go to apply for grants and loans, they're going to look at this and see, well, you're not allocating your internet because you're required to have internet to run your SCADAs and your computers and all the electronic equipment at the water plant. You got to have a phone up there. So there is some, not cell phone, but Verizon. Trying to think what else. Yeah, landline. So I mean, I reached out to these municipalities as requested, and they are all doing it the same way.
I guess I'm just not getting the information that I have asked. I don't see the breakdown. I'm being told what others are doing. But what is our breakdown? I want to see that cost. We should have that transparency for our town, especially in light of the 36% water rate increase. And if there's something that can be shifted, because even as our auditor said, it is somewhat subjective, then we need to be looking at what can be shifted, if anything, so we are trending more towards the black and not draining the water fund.
Commissioner Ritz, you had a question or a comment?
Yeah, I was just going to tie into what Commissioner Bowman Pollitt's saying. I'm thinking, we're talking about mowing at the water plant. We're talking about the water department. I'm looking at it in another way. and I'm not trying to pick on anybody, but I think about our office manager, you know, if she's answering the phone, if somebody has a question regarding their water bill, I'm assuming then she's writing down, anything she discussed with that individual, she would keep track of that. That would be billed to the water department.
Correct.
And then the next phone call, hey,
And
can I
she-
speak to
that's-
Kathy?
And that's, hold on.
And then there's like, can I speak to Kathy? Okay, there's 10 seconds. She has to account for her time to administrative. And then it must be mind numbing for somebody in her position
So yeah.
that has
so-
all these departments.
She has, she takes the water calls, she processes all the water payments that come in, she opens all the mail, so she processes all the water bills. She processes the people that come in to pay their bills. She talks to people about, leaks, shut-offs, etc. So yes, she does bill. So, when was water bills due? Last month? Whenever water bills were due, she will allocate more time on her timesheet to water and sewer because the bills are coming in, she's busier, she's processing bills, she's mailing out bills, things of that nature. So then, when the 2 months we have a little bit of downtime, then it shifts a little bit. It's fluent.
I get
If that
that.
makes
I
sense.
just, it must be pretty rough every day, all these different departments keeping track of all that. And I guess tying into what Commissioner Bowman Pollitt was saying, this is questions directed to the auditors, to ask them the question as unbiased third party auditor looking at this. Is there something raising a red flag if we were to pursue what Commissioner Bowman Pollitt is stating? If we were to fine tune our process regarding the water fund, are we charging items in excess to that fund, or could they be charged to the general fund? I understand the concept of having a separate enterprise fund, but where do we draw the line? What should actually be billed to the water fund? Ms. Mills, does that make sense?
Absolutely. So you should always be taking a look at it. It should be reviewed annually. It should be evaluated, right? So I think what's not being answered, and I don't know this level of detail, is how much supplies are being allocated to the water and sewer fund. I mean, we know that we're buying them. The town buys them in bulk. They benefit multiple activities and funds. And so there's a basis of a distribution of the cost. So maybe that's the missing piece that you can say. We know that 100% of the item purchased isn't exclusively to the general fund, or it would have been a direct charge. We're recognizing the fact that it benefits multiple activities, and so it's being allocated across the various funds and activities of the town. So again, and maybe it's a matter of targeting the higher expense line items to say, these are the ones I want to get a response back. This is the allocation basis that's being used, and we look at it from there.
Commissioner
would be
Bowman
in-
Pollitt, a question for you. Would you want to see a policy created to identify process to delineate what's what in each of these expenditure categories? Is that something that would help you?
Well,
see
I would have
differentiation?
thought that we would have had that already. I mean, because it's happening. So like, what are the actual costs? We have that from last year. What are the actual costs line by line of what was taken out of the water fund?
Well, I think we have that in the budget. Is that accurate, or rather the?
Not granular.
not
No,
the-
we have big numbers, but as far
Right.
as what is included in each one, no, we have general categories. So, okay, office supplies, yes, you use a pen.
Sure, sure.
But at the same time, I can use that pen. I know this is really nitpicky to write down a water question, but I can also use that pen to answer a question about parking permits. So like, where is the line?
So would you want a process established so that staff has a criteria to differentiate between spending and therefore between fund sources? Is that what your goal is?
I think my goal first is to find out where our money is going. Number one. I don't think what we saw so far is enough to really understand that. So yes, I would love to know what activities are being charged to the water fund, what items are being charged to the water fund. I would love to know that there is a systematic, consistent way of time tracking, that it's not up to the individual person to decide how best to track their time, but it should be consistent. It should be absolutely consistent across departments, so that at any time somebody could go in and see that time. I've been asked to do that in my role as a teacher. So if we're taking money from a water fund that is bankrupt, we should be able to justify and know where that time is coming from.
So
And
if
I
I
know
could
I
just-
see people
Go ahead.
shaking their heads, but I have residents calling me saying, can you explain this? And I can't. And I keep asking, and I'm not getting those answers.
So first off, the budget's are you saying the budget itself is not detailed enough? The budget that we present each year is not detailed enough, because everything that's allocated to any department is included in a line item in the budget that's approved by the commissioners.
I understand.
And then secondly, Jimmy Click, the Director of Public Works, he actually does his employees' timesheets. So he tracks the time that they do and he does their timesheets. So their time is absolutely verified by their department head. But
Okay,
if
so
the
we have
budget's-
one that's verified, one.
So basically, is the budget itself not detailed enough, which I'm not sure, because it's line by line in each department. And we go over what's included in each line item in that PowerPoint. If it needs to be more detailed, it needed to be brought to our attention so that we could prepare a more detailed budget. I can't speak to what Mr. Bratner does for his employees. I know he's been fine tuning it. It's a lot better now that he has taken over for the Water and Sewer Fund. Go ahead.
No, I'm just,
I saw somebody say.
Mr. Sweeney, you have your mic on. You want to?
No, I was waiting for it to finish.
Okay, so not trying to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
You are- okay.
Yeah, you're good.
So Mr. Sweeney and then
I
Mr.
just-
Ritz, is that okay?
Yes.
Okay.
I was just wondering, I think Commissioner Bowman Pollock, you're asking her for a breakdown of the their water fund completely, of every single item. Is that what you want, or is that what you want these other people, residents who are asking for, you want to see it?
Excuse me a second, I have to.
And again, this is just a discussion item, so there aren't any, if you feel like moving on.
I know when we had talked about the budget before, it was, what we get is an overview. And rightfully so, because I think each thing that is linked on the departments goes to 17 other spreadsheets. So there's more information there. We know what is being spent. And that's what I'm trying to find out, because I don't know how to explain this to people who ask those questions. And therefore, what can shift, if anything, to alleviate the fund? Originally, we did not have a self-sustaining water fund. It did come out of the general fund. And then we depleted the general fund. So we started charging things to water and sewer, but now our water and sewer is depleted. So there's got to be a happy medium somewhere in between. So I don't, I mean, what is the answer? Is there a rule precluding some portion of the salaries to be charged to a general fund? And or can a line item transfer be made to the general fund to the water sewer fund?
That's a question for your auditor.
Yes, we have seen it, not too often, but the general fund can subsidize a business type activity. We have had another municipality actually loan their enterprise fund several $100,000 for a specific capital item that needed to be purchased. So you can do it. It is not disallowed. But typically you don't see it all that often because the intent of the enterprise fund is to be self-sufficient, self-sustaining, and the user fees are supposed to cover the cost of operating the fund.
Thank you. And I think that's my concern is that with the socioeconomic status of our town, especially what we just talked about as far as childcare, it's going to have a huge impact on our residents. And while it's not best practice, it can be done. So what creative ways can we look at to take some of what that 8 million is in our general fund right now and alleviate our water fund so as not to put the burden right back onto our residents who are already struggling to make ends meet?
Michelle, can you explain something to me? Because I guess I got confused. First off, the 8 million, 3.1 of that is ARPA money, which is designated to the water and sewer fund. So that money is strictly for water and sewer infrastructure. That's what the board had voted on and decided. So about 1.5 of that, or a little bit more, is designated solely to the water clarifier. The remaining monies are going to go towards your water lines. So Michelle, I was under the understanding that the loan from the general fund to, say, the water fund, it had to be project specific, or is that not the case?
Well, the example that I just gave you was specific for the purchase of a piece of equipment. I don't believe, Kathy, it has to be project-based.
Okay.
Does it have to be paid back in a certain time frame, Ms. Mills, like one fiscal year, or
It's whatever you vote on, and
Whatever we do.
and there could be an instance where you vote not to treat it as a loan and that there is no payback.
So we have options.
Yes.
Why was that not brought to our attention before?
I don't know that question. I don't know if that specific question was asked before.
Yes, it was. The question was
Was it
asked
on the
multiple
5th?
times, and it was stated in multiple ways that we can't do it.
And that was the way that I was always told by the former town manager, and it was always my understanding.
Are we talking about,
that-
hold on, just for clarity's sake, are we talking about a loan?
No, any transfer of funds
Okay,
from
all right.
general fund to an
That's-
enterprise fund, or
that's
vice
where I'm
or
going.
or
So
vice
it-
versa.
Okay.
It's
I mean,
not.
the
Go
buzzword is a subsidy, right? You're subsidizing it, like you're recognizing the fact that, again, you're unable to charge user fees sufficient. So the word subsidy is in accounting terminology. Doesn't happen often. It's not really preferred, but it's not disallowed.
Yeah, so Commissioner
Okay.
Davis did ask that question, I believe at one of the last town meetings, and I did reach out to Michelle and Addie, and I was under the impression that it had to be project specific, but she has now clarified it. Again, as she said, it's not preferred, but.
And Michelle, why wouldn't it, I mean, it wouldn't be preferred basically because it would be noted in the audit and that you could run into trouble getting potential loans in the future based on the fact that the user fees aren't covering all the expenses within the fund. Is
Well,
that
I mean, if you think back several years ago when you guys were trying to get funding from, for a sewer project, it was conditional on the fact that you needed to raise your fees because they said the town had not raised their fees in a certain number of years. And until you did that, they weren't willing to help fund a project. Now, I can't recall the name of the project. Cole, you or Kathy may recall, and honestly, it may have even been before your time. So like there are times when a grantor is going to be looking at that and they want to make sure that you, the town officials, are doing everything you are supposed to be doing before reaching out and asking for their help. I don't know, honestly, because I don't know how they look at it, what they would say if they saw a subsidy and if they would say how they would view that. But from an accounting perspective, you can do that.
So I know Commissioner Davis did ask at a previous meeting, and I believe this was back in December, like if we're showing our due diligence of even raising the water rates 10% every year instead of 36%, that is showing that we are increasing fees, we're raising our fees, we're trying to take action. We were told that wasn't good enough. So I think in light of that information, things might have been different.
Were you told internally or externally?
These were all questions asked at the town meetings.
So basically what we said, we never said the 10% wasn't good enough. What we said is the 10% would never get you on its own to your 90-day reserve is what was relayed by staff. The email that I received from, that was basically part of the driving force was from USDA that basically said we had to have competitive water rates because they will not provide funding to a municipality that does not have quote unquote competitive water rates with other municipalities, because they're not going to continue to fund projects in a municipality that they don't have the rates to sustain it. And that was the driving force behind starting this water rate study. And then obviously the deficit that the water fund had shown over the last several years that was presented in the audit.
So as part of the competitive rates, what's the difference between the competitive rates and the 90-day reserve? Because I heard two different things there. Competitive rates were certainly 36%. We can definitely say we're getting more competitive. But at the same time, looking on the USDA website, I'm seeing more like a 45-day reserve, 30 to 45-day reserve. So are we being overzealous in going for a 90-day reserve?
So I'm trying to find my email from USDA and I'm not having any luck. They don't actually have a set reserve. We went with the 90-day reserve. It's kind of the industry standard. It was what was recommended by the contractor, the consultant that the board approved. So that's what we were shooting for, the 90-day reserve. And then I'm trying to find her email, but it was some time ago. It's going to take me a little while, that talked about having the, and that competitive is not the word she used. I can't seem to find it right now.
I remember at one time, it's USDA basically told us, hey, your rates are way too low.
Yeah.
We're not going to give you a loan.
And that's basically what her email said was, and I can't find it, but basically I'm only charging you $2. Cole's charging you $5. I'm not going to continue to give me money because, Cole's, charging the right rate. He's working hard to have a self-sustaining fund. Meanwhile, I'm not charging what I should be charging. And they're basically not going to give funding for that. I need to find the email because it explains it a lot better than what I just did.
So it sounds like it's exactly what happened for the sewer several years ago, that it's kind of like they're mandating that the rates be increased. Otherwise, you'll get no further funding.
That's correct. And that was the sewer plant. You're correct, Michelle. That was MDE mandated the town to raise their sewer rates significantly. And they did it. The board voted to do it in 2 stages in 2012 and 2014. Mm-hmm.
So USDA is now doing it related to your water fund.
Correct.
And did USDA encourage you to have the rate study done? Is that the sequence of events?
Yes.
And should you not go along with what the rate study has suggested, are they saying that they will not fund?
So the conversation that I had with USDA was basically when we were looking to get funding for this clarifier, the representative that we worked with at USDA basically said, sorry, but we cannot provide you any funding because your water rates are too low. You can't sustain your operations and you cannot sustain loan payments. And that is why we sought a grant from the state. The state provided us the bond for that. Oh, here it is.
Mr. Mayor.
I found it.
Just along all this, this time since 2010, we built the wastewater treatment plant and raised the sewer rates significantly for 2 bumps. FEMA dropped from in 2010, 3.2 million gallons of water usage. Where today they're down to less than at a million. And Daughters of Charity, this is all that sustainability green effort. This was going on where we're building a wastewater treatment plant. We're not sure that we're not even aware that this bottom's dropping out of our water funds, but the Daughters of Charity, another our second biggest user, they went from $1.8 million down to $1.4 million. So in approximately 13 years, they the same course we've been going over with the absorbing the sewer rate, which they cut. It's a 50% use in our biggest users. Their biggest users dropped the rates. Yes, sir.
FEMA was on our water and sewer?
Yeah,
They've always been.
yeah,
Always.
yeah, always.
Commissioner Ritz.
They are to this day?
Yes,
Why?
because there was a college who was connected to.
They're outside of town limits.
Yeah, but they were part of the college and they were connected.
Well, so what? Then
There's several places that are out of town
We
that
got
are on town water and
Waynesboro,
sewer.
We got Waynesboro.
well, I know like Mountain View Road, but there was some agreement, but my God, that
This goes back to 1970.
It goes back to the Emmitsburg Water Company. So they bought up and sold water to anybody that would
Right.
take water. And so when the town
Right.
bought out the Emmitsburg Water
Okay.
Company, the state of Maryland basically says, if you're already providing somebody water, you have to make every effort possible to continue to provide them water. If not, you're gonna have to, like we did for a couple of them, we did wells for them.
okay, well, before I get more aggravated, just make sure. Do they get a bill every month?
Yes,
So FEMA pays a bill.
they have a significant bill.
They're-
Yes.
they're
Okay,
one of our
good.
Highest paying.
Sorry, FEMA. I just was just
No,
making
I-
sure. I just want to make sure that they're paying.
Okay,
So I did find USDA's email.
may I
If-
finish?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Real quickly. No, but they are at a different tier for sewer and water, the highest users, both the Daughters and
But they're
the
down half.
and FEMA, but they would have never, we wouldn't have a Homeland facility if it was on a well and septic out there, would you? I don't, well, you work there. Dang. But some of the conversation that was going this way, and at the same time, the usage was going down, and so it's not like it was all this big mismanagement and everything. We're watching that. Then we had COVID-19, we had the discolored water, and we were planning again to look at this in 2019, and here we are in 2023. It is an increase in water, but we have water, and it's a good system. Sometimes I feel like the track here is that why are these people getting an increase and out there, and our residents are, why are we increasing their salaries? But you got to understand that we don't have bench strength. We have like 2 people or 1.5 people are qualified to run the sewer treatment plant. There's nobody in this room that I think can run that. I know I can't, and they're specialists, and they're in high demand, and we want to keep them. So we went back and charged our up our salaries a couple of times just to make sure we're competitive, so we can keep people. Turnover is very expensive, and lawn mowing out there at the we have people who are qualified to run lawnmowers and equipment, and we have people who are wastewater treatment and water treatment people, and we don't want the people at the wastewater treatment to get off attending the water and sewer and the water to run a lawnmower, and when we have specialists who do that. And I was in here last week and water bills were going up, and they had 4 people working on it, and some of them were secondary and some of them were primary. Somebody was stuffing, licking envelopes, and what somebody was charged with doing that. Then somebody had out of another department had to come in and answer the phones when they were ringing, so this could go on. So and the last thing I'd just add is that my experience is I've worked for government as a contractor, federal government, and they do want you to spend time on documenting your time, but at times they really got absurdly wanted you to hear to that, like every 15 minutes, and they finally said, this is insane. We cannot have you doing your work. And if we want somebody to stop work and have somebody to do that, then we're starting to build into it, maybe having another role here where you have somebody going around and monitoring that everybody's doing everything. So we're a small town. Everybody pitches in. We have a small staff and we do the best we can, but we're very surprised over the last 13 years to see our water bill, the usage just dropped from these people. And not to mention, we have I problems going on out here too all the time. So that's just a shotgun, but that's from my experience. Thank you.
Staff and Ms. Bowman Pollitt, I know this is your agenda item. I'm trying to frame this so we can address other agenda items in a timely way this evening. So obviously, I don't think we're going to get a resolution with what we're achieving at the moment, but I hope we're moving that way in all of your assessments. To the point, would it be possible, staff, to have Commissioner Bowman Pollitt, yourself, and department heads sit to discuss the review process for water department criteria for what gets billed to the water department from each of the departments? So that way she has a clearer view of what their criteria are, because I understand what her ask is about process and subjectivity. And I think she's trying to push toward objectivity and more clarification. So if that is possible, and when Commissioner Bowman Pollitt's feeling better, is that something we can put together? Perhaps.
I'm sure.
Is that okay? Thank you.
I would
Commissioner Bowman
prefer it.
Pollitt,
I would
would
love that to be a presentation at the town so that everybody is aware. I don't think this is just me being educated. I don't think it's me who is unclear. I don't think it's clear for anybody.
So
So
here's, go ahead. Sorry.
No, and that would be a starting point, yes. But in light of what we've discussed tonight, I want to, looking forward to other meetings, coming back to the water rate issue.
Sure. So I agree with that. And I definitely think that's a valuable thing. But what I'm considering as a suggestion would be, if that meeting happens in the office forum, staff members who aren't like yourself and myself trained in presentation as teachers, who might be very uncomfortable in this format, would be heard. And it would be the burden of other staff, for example, Ms. Willits and yourself as an elected, to carry their message forward. So I'm reluctant to bring a staff member into a meeting. Oh, very good. Okay. Okay. All right. So this phone is Commissioner Davis, who has lost his connection. So he's using a phone to participate. But jumping back to it, I know some department heads are not comfortable with that. I've heard that from them in conversations and from other staff that saying if they can avoid that, they would like to avoid that. So I'm trying to respect their wishes also. And I'll go back to the last thing, and I'm not trying to be redundant. I'm not trying to, push too hard and be obnoxious, but in the Maryland Municipal event, there was a room of about 200 small town commissioners like ourselves, who at one point in time were discussing how difficult it is to retain any staff, in that the staff members are choosing to opt out because they're burning out, because their peers have left work, and because the replacements are coming in this way. 200 applications are coming forward, 20 interviews occur, 5 jobs are proffered to fill 5 positions. One person comes forward and they leave at lunchtime. So I know part of this is we're trying to retain quality staff and develop that quality staff. So I don't want to put anybody in a spotlight who's not comfortable in that. So if we could have that flexibility as a thought, I think it would go very far toward achieving your goals of trying to get the information so you can bring it to the board.
I I'm fine with meeting with the staff. However, I don't think there's no reason why that can't be summarized and presented by the town manager at the next meeting as well. I'm not asking for all the department heads to come in. I just think that information also needs to be transparent for our public.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Sweeney?
I just think if you sit down, break down everything further, break it down even more further, show, and the residents who want to know where the stuff's being allocated to, just because the budget doesn't show where every single thing actually does go to, but you have it broke down further.
Commissioner Bowman-Pollitt, you're asking to see the math, so to speak. So like if for fiscal year 24 for water and sewer or the water department, some line item, we're seeing, let's say $7,000. Obviously for space reasons, all that information is not in the budget. You're just asking to see a breakdown of that $7,000.
Well, like, for example, I think there's office supplies across all departments. So there's so much in office supplies and water and sewer. I would assume that that's different than chemicals. I don't think chemicals would fall under office supplies. Our cell phones being charged to water and sewer. It just would be nice to know what exactly is being charged. And again, this is not coming back on our expertise or experts in our water and sewer department. I absolutely value them, understand their worth. It's the 15 of the 17 employees of the entire town that I think caught a lot of people off guard. And that's the part I think needs to be looked at. And we should have a consistent way as a town of tracking time, whatever that may be. And in light of what we learned tonight, I would like to see how we can alleviate some of the burden of the water rates on our residents moving forward. I know that's going to be a lengthy process, but it looks like we do have options. And it's something that I look forward to discussing in the future.
Commissioner Bowman-Pollitt, I talked to Kathy before the meeting last week and I asked her if the other municipalities that she reached out to were going to raise their water rates, and she told me yes. Is that correct?
That's correct.
They're all going to be raising their water rates in the next year or two.
Yeah, Thermont is in their exploratory stage and anticipate raising their rates next year. Middletown just did theirs December of 22. Walkersville is looking at their assessment fee in November, and also looking to raise rates in November as well. I didn't get an answer from Brunswick.
I'm not suggesting that we don't raise rates. I think that there is a misunderstanding there. I think what I'm suggesting is whether or not the 36% every year for 5 years is appropriate in light of the information that was clarified tonight.
And if you don't mind me interjecting, I think what she might be asking for is simple as, tell me what are direct charges to the water fund and tell me those where they're getting an allocation. And I'd like to know what that split is. So if you looked at each of the line items, Cole, would you be able to confirm that, again, I'm just going to say chemicals should be a pretty easy one. That would be a direct charge. It benefits only the water department. The nature of the chemicals are specific to the water department. And you would respond to say that that one was a direct charge. When you got to office supplies, there's going to be some supplies that are direct charges because of the nature of maybe it requires special paper to generate the water bills. And so that would be a direct charge, but you've allocated, 20% for those other things that benefit all departments across the town. I think maybe that's what she's asking for. Just tell me where there's an allocation being made and what is it versus those that are direct charges.
We can get examples of invoices that come in where things are allocated out based on allocations, certainly, and things that are direct charged. If there's departments where they order supplies directly and it's all used for their department, then we direct charge to that. But we can get examples of all those for her.
So for
Right.
example, you could look at office supplies, say, and be able to say that 60% of the balance based on last year's actual was direct charges, things that were needed specifically for the water department, and the remaining account balance represented an allocated percent. Does that sound like what you're looking for, Commissioner Bowman Pollitt?
Yes, that's more in line of what I was trying to get to. Yes, you summarized that nicely.
Okay.
Okay, so I think we can conclude there. Is that all right with the board? Mr. Davis, hold on.
Connected there. I still can't get connected back on. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Is everybody all right?
Yeah, I got one comment, and then what the auditors just came up with is exactly what I would like to see. Is there anything that we can do to help relieve the burden of the water fund? They know what situation we're in. Is there anything that we can do legally, and it's not going to throw up red flags, to help that fund? Number one. Number two, we just talked about 4 municipalities that I spoke with 3 of them at MML, and they are in the exact same position we are. Their water funds are going broke, and we're following the same way they do business. That's probably not a good thing. Maybe we have to look at a different way of doing things, as long as it's legal, that it can help this fund. And again, I apologize, I missed some of the conversation, but that's what I'm looking at.
That's what I was trying to get at. Thank you for summarizing it very eloquently, Commissioner Davis.
Great, thank you, sir. Okay, so Commissioner Bowman Pollitt, board, are we comfortable? Commissioner Davis, are we comfortable moving forward to from this discussion item to our next agenda item?
Yes.
Okay, wait, I will throw in one hitch. Ms. Walbrecker, you signed up for public comment. Do you care to make a public comment at this time regarding this discussion item? No. No, okay, thank you. Okay, so we will move forward now to agenda item number 2. And with that in mind, we turn to consideration of approval of Federal Stone's Public Works Agreement and authorize to sign the agreement on behalf of town for consideration.
Hi, so this is like this is a public works agreement for Federal Stone to make sure that all the improvement plans are properly executed and all associated fees are paid. Includes the general description and construction of improvements and financial agreements and any deeds and easements information. And it's a pretty standard public works agreement that's been used for all the other projects in town previously. So for approval.
Okay, do we have any questions for the town planner related to the Federal Stone? I want to characterize this correctly. Public Works Agreement. Do we have any questions for staff related to this?
Nothing jumped out at me, no.
Okay. Commissioner Davis, are we okay?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. All right, Commissioner Bowman Pollitt, are we okay to move forward?
Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you. Okay, so with that in mind, we've heard from all commissioners regarding perhaps a motion. Is there a motion to approve Federal Stone's Public Works Agreement and authorize to sign the agreement on behalf of town for consideration?
So moved.
Thank you. Motion's been made by Commissioner Ritz. Is there a second for Commissioner Ritz's motion?
I'll second. Go ahead.
Okay.
You can.
Okay. Motion's been made by Commissioner Ritz, seconded by Commissioner Davis. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Aye. Are there any nays? Hearing none, the motion carries 5-0. All commissioners voting in favor. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to try to jump quickly to agenda item number 3. Here we are. For consideration. approval of Silo Hill Plaza's Public Works Agreement and authorize mayor to sign agreement on behalf of town for consideration. So we turn to town staff again, our planner, hello.
Hi, so this is another public works agreement to make sure that all the improvement plans for the Silo Hill Plaza project, or formerly known as the Village Liquors project, and that all associated fees are paid.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for staff related to this agenda item for the approval of Silo Hill Plaza's Public Works Agreement and the authorization of the mayor to sign the agreement on behalf of the town? No, okay.
No.
All right, so therefore, is there a motion to approve of this agreement and authorization?
I so move.
Thank you. Is there a second for Commissioner Sweeney's motion?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Motion's been made by Commissioner Sweeney, seconded by Commissioner Ritz. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody against, please say nay. The motion carries 5-0 with all commissioners voting. We turn to agenda item number 4, approval of rules of procedures for Board of Commissioners for consideration. Pursuant to Article 2, Section 5 of the Town of Emmitsburg Charter, these rules of procedures are adopted as a guide to assist commissioners in an orderly and efficient conduct of all matters that come before them, such as agenda items, public hearings, and meetings. Okay, so, Mr. Ritz, this is something that you were,
No.
no, that was not you? That was not you?
Well,
Well,
part of it
It came out of
incorporates.
adding, it's been a while, it's probably been 6 months. It came about as the process of adding agendas or items to the agenda after a town meeting, and the conduct of public hearings. So yeah, it technically it did come from Commissioner Ritz. And then this was actually written by our legal counsel, Ms. Powell's office. And it basically is just guidelines on how you set your agenda, how you conduct public hearings, because we don't have anything like this. It should be something that we do have. I can highlight some key areas if you want me to go over it, or if everybody's read it, if they have any questions, however you would like to proceed, Commissioner O'Donnell.
Okay, let me turn to Commissioner Ritz. Is there anything you want to, I'll start with you as part of this is your impetus, your credit.
I appreciate that, but I'm just going to go ahead and defer to Ms. Willis to further explain. So thank you.
Okay.
It looks like, all I'm going to say is it looks like what I would have liked to have seen has been incorporated,
Very good. Okay, that's encouraging. Okay,
plus a lot more.
yeah, yes, yeah, indeed. Mr. Sweeney, anything?
No.
Okay, Commissioner Bowman Pollitt, anything that you want to put forward?
No, sir.
Thank you. Commissioner Davis, anything that you want to put forward?
No, I'm good. It's looks like a good document.
Okay. I want to ask for consideration of some small modifications because I worry about a loophole piece. So I'm on page 48, which is the first page, and I'm in item 2.5. I'll read it. It says, any item may be removed from the agenda upon the affirmative vote of at least 4 commissioners at the commencement of a commissioner meeting. Now, the language there struck me as vague, so I'll defer to this. When the Fraley tract developer came forward, that was a commissioner meeting. And it was supposed to have been an informational meeting, but it was still a commissioner meeting. And therefore, some members might decide to modify the agenda outside of a public meeting where public comment would not be allowed because it was an informational meeting. So my thought would be to modify this to say, any item may be removed from the agenda upon the affirmative vote of at least 4 commissioners at the commencement of a Board of Commissioners town meeting. So it's this type of meeting where that could occur as opposed to a non-town meeting, which would be, I would argue, less transparent. So does anybody have any concerns with that modification?
No.
No.
But while we're at it,
Yes, sir.
that same line item, I wasn't going to ask this question, but since you brought up 2.5, I will.
Okay.
What is the significance, Ms. Willetts, of the 4 commissioners rather than a simple majority of 3? What was Ms. Powell's rationale on that?
I don't know. I don't know. I didn't ask for that question on this one. I can find out. And the item may be removed from the agenda. I don't know what the rationale was.
As far as I know, nothing else in our code requires 4 commissioners. It's just a simple majority.
Super majority.
Super.
Yeah.
Super.
I don't have a problem making it a majority vote without knowing the rationalization behind it.
And a minimum of 3.
That'd be perfect.
I'd say a majority in case you don't have,
Three.
A majority of 3.
right,
Might only have
a
three.
majority vote.
3, okay.
Because I think that's the way in your charter and some of the other code is written as a majority. In case you don't have all 5 of you here.
Okay.
So it will be, if there's just 3.
Yeah, that makes
you-
sense.
3 and you have a quorum. So any item may be removed from the agenda upon the affirmative vote of the majority of commissioners at the commencement of a Board of Commissioners town meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
That's fine with me. Yeah.
Okay. That works for me.
Sorry, I wasn't even gonna, but
That's fine. It's a good catch. Mr. Sweeney, anything?
Fine.
Okay. Commissioner Davis, are you okay with the modification as presented?
Yep, I'm good.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Bowman Pollitt?
Yes, I'm good. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, so is there a motion to accept the Town of Emmitsburg Board of Commissioners rules of procedure, pardon me, as modified?
We're so moved.
Thank you. Is there a second for Commissioner Sweeney's motion? Thank you, sir. Motion's been made by Commissioner Sweeney, seconded by Commissioner Davis. Is there any further discussion?
yes,
Yes, sir.
just, we didn't really talk about the rest of it. I mean, I guess no one had any questions. I guess only one question is what is the significance of establishing the meeting order in this document? When we pretty much followed the same meeting.
It's just establishing.
I
the
remember you
rules
tweaked
of
it a
proce-
little bit when you
Yeah.
came on, but we haven't really changed it since you've been town manager.
Right. I guess it's just establishing the rules of procedure. So you actually have a document going forward that's been voted on. In case I'm not here, the board completely changes, then you have continuity going forward. It's just establishing the order of it.
Institutional memory,
Yeah.
so
I don't see the harm in it.
continuity of structure. Was that satisfy?
Yeah,
Okay,
just an inquisitive
sure.
thing for me, like
Any other,
me.
any other discussion before we move to vote?
No.
Okay, all right, so the motion's been made and we've had discussion. So all in favor, please say aye.
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 Anybody against? The motion carries 5-0 with all commissioners voting. Thank you. Okay, we move forward. Okay, agenda item 5, I'm on page 52. Approval of resolution 2023-05R authorizing Mayor Briggs and town manager to file an application for federal assistance with the U.S. Department of Agriculture or Rural Development for consideration. Okay, staff, we turn to you
Yeah,
for a
so
moment.
this is Ms. Shaw's grant application to the Department of Housing and Community Development. She sent me some notes to go along with it. To read the public notice, here, she gave me specific notes, so I'll just read what she wrote. So please note, a public hearing is not required. Citizens just need to be given the opportunity to provide public comment if they want to. The public notice for this agenda item was advertised in the Frederick News Post on Thursday, June 29th, 2023, as required by the grant. The town is planning to file an application with the this is a USDA grant, sorry. USDA Rural Development for financial assistance to purchase and install new parking meters. The town currently has 125 parking meters along Main Street. These meters encourage turnover to give visitors parking opportunities while they dine or shop. The proposed project would replace the 125 existing parking meters with approximately 80 new dual payment meters that accept both coin and credit card payments. The new parking meters are needed because the town's existing coin meters are over 20 years old and many of them do not work anymore and parts can no longer be found to repair them. The new meters will give visitors the opportunity to use coins and credit cards to pay for parking, whereas the previous meters were coin only. The new meters will declutter Main Street by reducing the number of meters from 125 to 80 due to the ability to purchase double-spaced meters. If approved, the anticipated total cost of the project is $65,000, of which the town is requesting $35,750 or 55% of the total project in community facility grant funding from the USDA Rural Development, and the town will provide the required match of $29,250, which the board approved as part of the fiscal year 24 budget. The proposed resolution 2023-05R is required by the USDA to apply for funding. The USDA also requires citizens be given the opportunity to become acquainted with the proposed project and to comment on such items as economic and environmental impacts, service area alternatives to the project, or any other issues.
Okay, any questions for staff related to this item?
I'm doing my best.
No? Okay, all right. Is there a motion to accept the resolution to file an application for federal financial assistance with the U.S. Department of Agricultural and Rural Development for the Main Street parking meter replacement project?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Ritz. Is there a second for Mr. Ritz's motion?
I'll second so I can answer the question.
Thank you, sir. Motion's been made by Commissioner Ritz, seconded by Commissioner Davis. Is there further discussion?
Yeah, just one quick question. If we would happen to get this grant, we're not committed to doing this project. If we would be short on funds for something else and need that 29,000, we could back out.
Yeah, I think until the grant agreement is actually signed and we agree to it, the town could back out at any point.
Okay, because I know if you remember correctly, I made a comment last month about things that we absolutely need and things that we want. This one's kind of right on the top of the fence of between that needing and wanting. So that's why I asked that question.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Davis, are you satisfied with the information that you received from staff?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, sir.
And ultimately, when it comes down to it, when we finally proceed, there'd be another agenda item where for consideration.
Yes, there'll be a vote on it. Yes.
For the grant agreement?
Yes. This is the approval.
This is
to
authorizing.
Submit the application. For
Correct.
said grant, yeah.
Correct.
But the application. of-
Procedurally, I don't remember the grant agreement coming back, but it can come back.
If we're making a purchase of that size, doesn't it have to come?
So
before
the grant
board?
agreement itself is one thing. The purchase amount of the meters would absolutely has to come back to the board.
So
Okay.
that's our control point.
There you go. Thank you.
Okay, so the motion's been made, it's been seconded, we've had discussion. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Anybody against? The motion carries 5-0 with all commissioners voting in favor. Okay. We now turn to agenda item number 6. I'm on page 55 of 59. Approval of resolution 2023-06R, Community Legacy Grant Authorization for facade for consideration. Staff, we turn to you. Oh, I'm sorry, the planner, we turn to you. I'm sorry, very good.
Hi, so this is the community legacy grant that the town has been getting since 2013. You apply for it every year. So this application asks for documentation to show that the application is being supported by the legislative body. So this resolution is to approve that application or approve the application. Sorry. allow the staff to submit the application. Sorry, it's like past my bedtime, so. Okay, yeah, so that's about it.
Great. Okay, do we have any questions for staff related to this item?
Yes. What's the most we can ask for?
I think,
Always ask for 75.
yes,
maybe
that's
it's
all it was.
50.
That's why I was gonna change it up a bit.
We've always stuck with 75. Because they've always just done, we've asked for 75, they give us 50.
What if we did something wild and crazy and asked for 100,000 this year? That's really wild and crazy. You know, additional $25,000, but
Well, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
That is a lot,
you know,
but-
if we ask for 100, maybe they'll give us more than 50. Or they got a rubber stamp. Emmitsburg is 50 every time.
Okay.
Did you, in your research, I know you just sent it to me.
Mm.
Was there anything in there that says the limit that you can apply for?
There's nothing that says like no.
But it is a competitive grant with other
It is pretty
communities,
competitive,
so
yeah.
there's a limited pot on this.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that's redundant, forgive me, but
Well, competitive,
They
you
use it too.
yes.
Somebody didn't even know.
Little old Emmitsburg doesn't really stand a chance.
Are you kidding? This has been a glorious grant for us.
No, I agree. But I'm just saying, I don't know. I'm throwing it out there. If everybody else thinks it's a dumb idea, then
I
no.
don't think it's a dumb idea, I just know it's worked for us in the past. So
Might,
out of caution.
If it ain't broke.
Afraid to ask for more, but I like it. So it's ultimately board's decision on what, we want to do.
How's this? I mean, if everybody is comfortable with the 75,000, I'm not gonna vote no on it just because I suggested a higher amount. You guys didn't agree with me. How's that?
Reasonable.
So that said, what dollar amount do we want? Don't all speak at once here.
Will it be considered a red flag if we do change the amount? Do they look at continuity or does that not matter? I'm not sure either way. It's just a question.
So it would change our budgeting for the match. Is that correct?
No,
Not this
so
one?
no, for community legacy, no. For
Oh,
this
it's-
grant,
Okay,
this is the homeowner has the match. We're the pass through for it.
okay.
The max the homeowner can get is 12.5.
Do we have a contact person that we could call and to at least ask the question and saying, hey, you know, would it take us out of the competition if we asked for a little bit more?
There is a state coordinator. I can get in touch
So
with.
my only concern with that was this was due at the
On-
end of June.
Yes.
We were able to get a little bit of leeway to get it approved tonight, to get it submitted.
Oh.
If we put it off,
Okay,
that's my concern.
Maybe this is the wrong year to ask for 100.
She does it every 6 months. Is it
My
every 6
honest
months?
opinion, if anybody cares, I think
Every
we
year.
should leave it where it's at.
Okay.
If anybody, I mean, it's just, I mean,
yeah, if we could leave it where it is at this year, and then by next year, if we can do some investigative work to see if, you know, there's a little bit more out there for us, I think that'd be great.
Sounds good.
Okay, so Mr. Ritz,
That's a great compromise. Yeah. I'm good.
okay,
All right.
okay, so
Just wasted 5 minutes.
no, we've gotten to a good truth. Okay, so
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution 23-06R as presented.
thank you, sir. Is there a second for Mr. Ritz's motion?
I'll
I'll
second.
second. Oh, sorry, didn't mean to cut you off again.
You know, he can do.
Okay,
That's fine.
motion's been made by Commissioner Ritz, seconded by Commissioner Davis. Any further discussion? All in favor, hearing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Anybody against? The motion carries 5-0 with all commissioners voting in favor.
I do have a comment about this subject, though. you know, we ran into some issues last year about the way it was administered, and you know, the poor mayor didn't get a roof. And are there some things that we need to clean up to clarify? Right now, there's a mayor and 3 commissioners that qualify or have property that would qualify for this grant. Is there something that should be put in, whether that we can or whether we can't? You know, the way you're asking for 3 bids, over half the people didn't have 3 bids, even though they were required. Is there something we got to clean up there? And I'm not sure why you got to get 3 when you don't have to take low bids. That doesn't make any sense. So there's just some things there that we could clean up before we start to administer this project.
Commissioner Davis, I actually have an agenda item for the August 21st meeting. It's entitled Approval of Rules or of Procedures for Community Legacy Grant Program for the Sustainable Communities Work Group for consideration.
That's super. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Commissioner Davis. I actually had a note I was going to tie in. It was a good segue tonight. So cool.
Okay, Commissioner Davis, we're good?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Commissioner Ritz? We're okay on that?
Yeah. Yeah, we'll talk about that agenda item. You're gonna,
Okay.
when we get to it, but I'm good.
Okay, so we now turn to staff to set the, to present a possible agenda for the next meeting. Now, for clarification, our next meeting is July 17th. So this is our next town meeting.
I've got both July
Well-
17th agenda and August 21st agenda.
Okay, thank you. So we want to start with the 17th?
Sure.
Okay,
I have one consent agenda item. It's the proclamation making August 2nd, 2023 National Night Out for consideration. And then one agenda item is to hold a public hearing, then consideration of ordinance 2023-08, which would amend section 17.42 floodplain management to meet FEMA standards. Adoption of this amendment is mandatory and would allow the town to continue to participate in the National Flood Insurance Program and be eligible for disaster relief.
okay, do we have any questions for staff before we make a motion to consider that agenda? Terrific, hearing none. All in favor of accepting the July 17th, 2023 agenda as presented by staff? Is there a motion for that?
We have the motion as consent.
To accept the agenda, or we could go with consent if you'd like, but I thought it's an agenda, so we're
You can
voting on
do,
it. Okay, do you want consent?
yeah.
Okay, let's do consent therefore. That works for me. Mr. Sweeney,
Yes.
Mr. Ritz,
Okay.
Commissioner Bowman Pollitt,
I'm all good.
thank you. Commissioner Davis,
I'm good.
thank you. And myself, yes. So we have consent there. Staff, we turn to you now for the August 21st town meeting.
Okay. Number one, approval of 2023 election judges for consideration. Number two, approval of rules of procedures for Community Legacy Grant Program for the Sustainable Communities Work Group for consideration. Side note, these rules of procedure are adopted as a guide to assist the work group and staff to efficiently and orderly administer the Community Legacy Grant Program. Number three, approval of bid for the downtown streetlight purchase for consideration. Number four, hold a public hearing, then consideration of ordinance 2023-09, which would add a new section 17.26 EDFD, Economic Development Flex District floating zone. Just the note, this amendment would, I left the word out, allow the town to approve a zoning map amendment to create a new district that would function as a floating zone restricted to sites of 25 acres or greater in the B2, ORI, IP, and CR districts.
Okay, consent agenda again. I'm sorry, pardon me.
Yeah,
Consent from the
consent's
board,
fine. Mm-hmm.
pardon me. Okay. I'll ask Paul the commissioners, Mr. Sweeney. Are you okay with the agenda as presented by staff?
Yes.
Mr. Ritz,
Yes.
Commissioner Bowman Pollitt,
Yes.
thank you. Commissioner Davis,
I'm good.
thank you. And myself, yes. Okay, so staff, we have the agenda set for both meetings. Thank you. Any other items, board members, we need to share at this point in time? Great, hearing none. Is there a motion to close the proceedings?
So moved.
Great, is there a second for Commissioner Ritz's motion?
Second.
Thank you. Motion's been made by Commissioner Ritz, seconded by Commissioner Sweeney. All in favor, please say aye.
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 The motion carries 5-0, and we conclude our meeting at 9:50 PM.